The year is 2010. Rainbow were in the fallout of a deadly attack which took place in Vegas, spanning over July 2nd and July 3rd. Although successful, this operation would see civilian casualties, as well as Rainbow operatives killed in the field. The integrity of the team as well would come into question, as one of Rainbow's very own operatives, Gabriel Novak, would play a large hand in these attacks. The operation in Vegas would conclude with the death of Gabriel, and the promotion of Bishop to Rainbow 5. This incident comes just a year after one of Rainbow's darkest days involving a nursery bombing in Bratislava. Despite this, the world still needed Rainbow, and under the leadership of Domingo Chavez as 6, they would continue to operate for years to come. That was until 2012, where one of the final nails in the coffin for Rainbow would occur. An assault team led by Daniel Bogart, consisting of demolitions operative Gerald Morris and sniper Kure Galanos, would infiltrate a facility at an undisclosed European breakaway state. The team are given clear instructions. Both Bogart and Morris will enter the facility and extract a bomb maker they have intel on, whilst Kure holds down the perimeter, providing a clean exit for the rest of her team. Both Daniel and Gerald would make quick work of the men inside. Both of these operators have been with Rainbow since the very start and are more than equipped to deal with these terrorists. After fighting their way through the facility, they come across the bomb maker. As Daniel begins to prepare the man for extraction, Gerald notes that these are the same explosives used in the nursery bombing 3 years prior. And it is here where something changes in Gerald. He raises his weapon to the man they now have hostage, much to the disagreement of Daniel. Daniel reminds Gerald that their mission is extraction and to put his weapon down. But Gerald is tired of the system. He's tired of Rainbow. He knows that this man will just be used as a chess piece between two countries playing nice, and he executes him on the spot. Bogart now raises his weapon and things begin to get heated. Gerald reveals to Daniel that he's fighting for something bigger now, and that the two of them don't matter in the grand scheme of things. As a reluctant Bogart moves his finger to the trigger, his once friend and colleague murders him in cold blood. As the explosives in this facility continue to count down, Kure, who is still watching their exit, loses communication with both men. In fear that something has went wrong, she gives up her post and attempts to enter the facility. As the explosives get closer to their detonation, Gerald is extracted by an unknown group of people, whilst Kure is caught in the exploding building. Both Daniel and Gerald would be deemed KIA, and Kure would survive the ordeal despite being heavily injured. This mission would be the final strike in Rainbow's record, and the team would be officially decommissioned following 2012. With Gerald Morris presumed dead, and the team's internal standing ruined, the world no longer had Rainbow. For the first time since the beginning of the 21st century, the world was no longer under the protection of the covert unit they didn't even know existed. In the absence of Rainbow, a terrorist group known as the White Masks would begin to increase and grow their operations around the globe. It is known that they are indiscriminate to their victims, disregarding age, religion, gender, and nationality. The true threat of the White Masks would reach a boiling point in 2015. When US politician Aurelia Arnault would petition for the reactivation of Team Rainbow as a response to the growing threat of the White Masks and other terrorist organizations. Their ability to enact terror on a global scale only added more support for Rainbow's reactivation, and after a successful majority vote, the NATO response team was born once again. Now, Rainbow would be reactivated under the supervision of the Global Security Alliance Council. The council, which is known more commonly as the GSAC, will overlook Rainbow's performance and their actions, with Aurelia succeeding Domingo Chavez's role as the new 6. Perhaps as to avoid prior mistakes and shortcomings, the GSAC would not call on previous Rainbow operatives to make up this new roster. Rather, they would call upon 5 different units from around the world, and thanks to the team's military and psychological culture advisor, Harry Pandey, 20 operatives would be successfully screened and selected to join Rainbow. The first of which being the British SAS, consisting of 4 operatives by the call signs of Sledge, Thatcher, Smoke, and Mute. Next was the FBI SWAT, consisting of Ash, Thermite, Castle, and Pulse. The French GIGN would have 4 operatives as well. Twitch, Montagne, Doc, and Rook. 4 Russian Spetsnaz operators, Glaz, Fuse, Kapkan, and Tachanka, would join the unit as well. And the final 4 operatives would hail from the German GSG-9, being Blitz, IQ, Jaeger, and Bandit. The 20 operatives would make their way to Hereford Base in the United Kingdom, the home of the British SAS, but also the base of operations for Rainbow ever since the team's inception back in the late 90s by John Clark. They would also be joined by the trusty Rainbow recruits and all of the operational Rainbow staff, including Auspice, a signal officer that will relay and announce information to the team during their missions and training. Rainbow's training at Hereford would begin, and just like the training program the operators before them followed, the team would be pushed to be the best that they can be.
We have an active situation. The nature of this threat will require a full strike team. You're being deployed. One of our most notable institutions of learning is under siege. This is more than just an attack on our soil. This is an attack on our future. We know that all first responders have gone silent. We confirm numerous casualties due to the release of an unidentified biochemical weapon. Your newly assembled Rainbow team faces a trial by fire against an unknown number of enemy combatants. You're to be inserted directly into the hot zone. We will have decontamination crews on standby. Your orders are to eliminate the threat and rescue any survivors you may find. This is why Rainbow was formed. This is what you all have trained for. Your time is now.
After the White Masks initiate a chemical attack on US soil at one of the nation's most prestigious universities, Bartlett in Massachusetts, the newly reborn Rainbow is finally deployed. Equipped in hazmat suits, the operatives make their way into the central building of Bartlett. Using their expertise alongside their new teammates, they face off against the terrorists perpetrating this attack. On top of this, there are 2 chemical explosives currently planted inside the building. The operatives have been provided with a defusal kit to seize any further chemical production from these bombs. The White Masks have finally met a force too great for them, and Rainbow would successfully take control of the situation. Although the attack on Bartlett was now over, the White Masks were still out there. The operators would prove their effectiveness on the field, as well as reinforcing Aurelia's decision to reactivate the team. With Bartlett being a successful operation for Rainbow, the team would be given the green light to continue, and the GSAC would provide more funding. With Team Rainbow now back in full operation, the team's expertise will be called upon numerous times. Operation Black Ice would be the first of these missions, after a luxurious yacht would crash into an iceberg in the Hudson Bay area of northeastern Canada. Rainbow would be deployed to the scene after an unidentified submarine would soon dock near the vessel. This would also be in collaboration with the Canadian forces, with 2 JFT-2 operatives, Buck and Frost, being sent along on this mission. For the very first time since the team's reactivation, the 2 Canadian operatives would be recruited to Rainbow, further helping establish the team's presence around the world. This mission would immediately be followed by Operation Dustline, where a situation would begin to unfold at a border in the Middle East. Officials would lose control of this checkpoint after being overwhelmed, and chaos would ensue. As to help aid local law enforcement in regaining control of the border, Rainbow would be deployed alongside 2 Navy SEALs stationed in the area to provide their expertise of the region to the team. These Navy SEALs, who go by the call signs of Blackbeard and Valkyrie, would also go on to join the team just like the 2 ops before them as Rainbow continues to expand. Each successful operation means more funding from the GSAC, and Rainbow can continue to establish their presence. Well, their worldwide reach would next continue to South America, as Operation Skull Rain would find the team working with the Brazilian Bope to help pacify a large-scale conflict that was escalating in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. This operation would also see 2 Bope operatives, Kivera and Capitao, join the Rainbow program and officially become Rainbow operatives. Rainbow were not slowing down. It's clear that the world needed them more than ever, and the growing number of partner nations would help establish this. The team would be deployed to East Asia in Operation Red Crow, where high above the streets of Nagoya, Japan, a Yakuza war would be brewing in the grounds of a gorgeous mansion at the height of a skyscraper. Seeing this as the time to strike to prevent any further conflict, the Japanese SAT would collaborate with Rainbow. They would deploy 2 of their brightest operators, Hibana and Echo, to join Rainbow for this mission, and subsequently to the team. Now, this was a very prosperous time for Rainbow. The increased resources, operators, and worldwide presence was having a global effect. The threat of the White Masks were continuing to diminish, and Rainbow were living up to the expectations that were not only set by the GSAC, but by John Clark over a decade prior. Now that the team have been in operation for a good period of time, they've had chances to get to know each other and see how their gadgets work in the field. And during one of his periods of days off, Glaz would attend a military games, where he would be bested in a marksman competition by none other than Kure Galanos. Kure, who is now no longer able to walk due to the incident in 2012, would go on to conversate with Glaz following the end of this friendly competition. It is here where he would get some mentorship, which he would go on to say is some of the best he's ever received, as well as the recommendation of an upgraded scope that offers a new layer of thermal visual feedback that she was using. Despite this, Kure's focus was no longer that of being a sniper operative. Being restricted to a wheelchair, she was unable to serve in the field. Although casually partaking in these competitions, her current focus would see her returning to education, studying mechanical engineering. With her Rainbow days now behind her, the case wouldn't be the same for Glaz, as he'd employ his new scope in Operation Velvet Shell, where alongside the newly recruited Spanish GEO operatives Jackal and Mira, Team Rainbow would be deployed to the rocky coastline of Ibiza, Spain, after the seashore would be put at risk. Not only did each operation serve a purpose in safeguarding the world, the added pressure which Rainbow was applying, with even more operatives joining the team, was continuing their efforts against the White Masks, with each operation having the potential to provide more intel. As Rainbow's internal reputation was continuing to grow, there was also another organization that have been continuing to make a name for themselves in the private sector. This private military company, known as Nighthaven, would constantly be hitting new heights thanks to their groundbreaking tech, skilled agents, and impressive field records. They would catch the attention of notable GSAC members such as Harry Pandey, and he would keep Nighthaven's activities close on his radar. Meanwhile, Rainbow, who were continuing their expansion, would extend an offer to the Polish Grom to recruit one of their members, Ella. Not only does Ella have an impressive record and resume, she is also the daughter of the late Jan Bosak, a respected Grom commander who later became the country's Minister of Internal Affairs. Jan would later go on to commit suicide, causing a rift between Ella and her sister. After completion of her training and integration into the team, it wouldn't be long until she is deployed on the field. Operation Blood Orchid would see the team being deployed to Hong Kong, where a major drug ring was operating from an abandoned theme park on the shores of the region. This seemed to be a major player in the production and trafficking of these narcotics, and with the aid of 2 special duty unit operatives, Legion and Ying, they would successfully raid and shut down this operation. Following this mission, Rainbow would recruit another operative from the Polish Grom, this time being Zofia Bosak, the older sister of Ella. Although the two sisters were now fighting together on Rainbow, their upbringing and suicide of their father would still cause a rift between them. But Zofia would be recruited just in time for Operation White Noise, where Rainbow would partner with the South Korean 707th Special Mission Battalion and recruit two operatives from the unit. The first being Vigil, a defector from the north as a kid, who would grow up to be a respected member of the White Tigers, as well as a hacker by the name of Dokkaebi. Unlike Vigil, Dokkaebi wasn't in the consideration list to join Rainbow by her commanders. After facing constant oppression from her higher-ups, she knew that she would never have been considered. But after hearing rumors of this Dark Ops unit during joint training exercises with the British SAS, she knew that this was the opportunity she had been seeking. So she used her expertise and hacked into the system to place her name on the Rainbow consideration list. Although she would be caught for this, with the higher-ups wanting to punish her, Harry would see this as a positive for Rainbow, seeing the true potential of her skills and her capabilities. With Rainbow holding a higher jurisdiction, she would remain without consequence, however, cause a lot of bad blood with her higher-ups, with many of them threatening to arrest her if she steps back in Korea. Rainbow would also use a modern communications and observation tower in the middle of the nation's capital, Seoul, as a training facility. Closing this tower off to the public, Rainbow can use this to train the recruits and operatives in scaling large buildings high off the ground, introducing unique vertical training, stuff that they simply can't get from Hereford alone. The landscape of terror in the world is forever changing. This is one of the reasons why Rainbow was conceived to begin with, and Aurelia knew this all too well. With the growing threat of biological and chemical attacks propelling special forces to receive training to function under these extreme conditions and handle hazardous materials, Aurelia would greenlight the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threat unit inside of Rainbow. With these operatives being experts at handling level 4 crisis hot zones, the Rainbow Seaburn unit formalizes a standard in best practices in the event of such attacks. The unit would consist of one of their more recent recruits, Legion, as well as two hand-selected operatives, Lion, who comes from the French GIGN, and Finka, hailing from the Spetsnaz. This would be a major milestone in Rainbow's progression, and also the first of many changes that the team were soon to see. As they would continue to expand further, Rainbow would show interest in two Italian operatives from the GIS. Fresh off the success of Operation Parabellum, which saw Alibi going undercover in the Vinci Guerra crime family to help gather intel to bring this family down from the inside. This would be escalated when the crime family would learn of this operation through a newspaper leak and would attempt to flee their villa in the Tuscan countryside. Well, this is where a strike team led by Maestro would act off of Alibi's intel and successfully stop the family from escaping. These two operatives would fit nicely inside of Rainbow, as another Rainbow unit would be formed. Codename Grimsky, which real name is the Urban Tactical Response Team, is Rainbow's testbed for operations in dense urban centers. It draws on such expertise as riot officers for mob behavior and intelligence operators for converting local assets and building allied networks. The core operators of this unit have been hand-selected by Rainbow, the first being an American Delta Force operative known as Maverick and a British Metropolitan Police officer known as Clash. But they aren't the only operators in this unit. It also employs the expertise of Kivera, Bandit, Alibi, who recently joined the team, Castle, and Ying. Grimsky trains operators on navigating and surviving in hostile cities or evading and diverting mobs. This would be yet another example on how Rainbow was evolving to the current climate and making sure they are prepared for whatever is in their way. During this process of the team's evolution, Rainbow would manage to secure a deal with Jalal El-Fassi, who is the current sitting Qaid of the legendary Fortress training facility located in the Atlas Mountains. Descending from a long line of Qaids, which means commander, he would help bring the reputation of this fortress to new heights. Rainbow would not only secure permission to use the renowned fortress as a training facility, but its stoic leader, Qaid, and one of his previous students, Nomad, would also be recruited to Rainbow. With now one of the most prestigious training facilities at their disposal, Rainbow would finally draw a killing blow to the White Masks. The central chain of the White Masks would be toppled, with Rainbow seizing their bank accounts and leaving what little remaining cells to fend for themselves. Without many more resources, they would retreat into the woodworks. The very reason for Rainbow's reactivation was now completed. The White Masks were no longer deemed a threat to the world, and this achievement wouldn't go without acknowledgement. For her efforts as Six during this time, Aurelia would be offered the position of Secretary of State, a promotion in which she would accept. As she would begin to leave the long line of Sixes that would oversee Rainbow, she would give her full endorsement to her psychological and military cultural advisor, who has been by her side since the team's reactivation and already has a strong understanding of the unit. Dr. Harry Pandey was now 6, and he had a new vision for Rainbow. With the team now under the direction of Harry, he would begin to lay the groundworks for his future vision of the squad. He would send the following statement to Rainbow staff and GSAC members, saying, "You've seen me before, perhaps in the shadows, observing, watching, recording my thoughts. While Six would take center stage, I was never far behind, whispering my advice as I calculated and planned Rainbow's every step. Now, as I assume the mantle of Six, I can finally set in motion the strategies I have carefully engineered. I know it will take years to unfold, but no matter, I am playing the long game. I will change Rainbow forever. Also, please just call me Harry." The first thing he would do would assign Mira to the head of Rainbow's R&D department. She would now take charge on testing and development of Rainbow's newest gadgets. Already having an understanding and close relationship with the operators, Harry valued the importance of the teamwork and bonds that joined them all together. He would begin to open psychological reports on all the operators, with Dokubi's one highlighting a conflict between her and Thatcher. The methods employed by these two operators caused them to begin bashing heads. Thatcher, who is an older, experienced SAS soldier, understands the value of technology, but he sees it as a crutch. Lean on it too hard and you'll fall. Whereas Dokubi sees it as a valuable tool in gaining control. This would be highlighted during one of their training exercises at Hereford, where Dokubi wanted to hack a camera inside of a room to gain intel, whereas Thatcher, who believed that it was taking too long, chose to disable the camera with an EMP and then sweep the room in a more traditional manner. We would also get to see some of Thatcher's personal life, such as the boat he lives on, called the Iron Maggie, as well as his brother. And Harry would make a very important point to Dokubi, explaining to her that Rainbow needs to embrace both the past and the future. That is the strength of this unit, the strength of these operators. Thatcher is no more or less valuable than Dokubi, and this gives us the first glimpse into how Harry is going to manage the team a bit differently to Aurelia. Harry would also begin the planning phase of his program, an initiative in which he sees to decentralize Rainbow from Hereford and establish more bases for a global presence. As well as this, he would purchase an old abandoned Commonwealth Stadium in Greece and begin to convert it into a state-of-the-art facility, allowing for different modular training rooms that can be configured to whatever design they want, as well as the start of a new, unique training system. Meanwhile, at the other side of the world, two protection specialists with the Australian SASR mobility platoon, Gridlock and Mozzie, have been assigned a protection detail for a high-value convoy traveling across the sunburnt country. An unscheduled pit stop at a lonely petrol station mission turns into a standoff when their convoy is unexpectedly pinned down. The two SASR operatives would be the first to join Rainbow under Harry's leadership, and Harry would also begin to look at different avenues of recruiting operatives. His next recruitment would be of the Danish Jaeger Corps operative Nook, whose identity is so secret and sensitive to national security that it is held securely at NATO. As well as this, Secret Service agent Colin McKinley, who worked as personal protection detail for President Baldwin, would get an offer to join Rainbow after the president himself would give his full endorsement and commendation. Now, Harry's program was beginning to come together, and this new direction for Rainbow was being set on its course. Harry would continue with his psychological reports of his operatives, where Mira would open up, reminiscing about her father, and talking about her new responsibilities as the R&D leader, and even getting through to some of the more hardened operators like Thatcher, with him transcribing key moments such as him saying, "When I walk away from the fields of battle, it will be my time to put my guns into the ground. There shall I bury them, along with my rage." As well as, "One day, my war will be over. Whatever battles, lost or won, will be behind me. And across the sea, Corsica awaits. There, I will rest." Meanwhile, in the South American country of Bolivia, an undercover officer with the Federal Police of Brazil would be working deep undercover within the Santa Blanca cartel. This officer would have his identity exposed, and his life would now be put at risk. Not long after this incident occurs, Rainbow operative Kivera would go AWOL from the team. Back in Bolivia, a Tier 1 special mission unit of the United States Army, known as the Ghosts, were deep in an operation to bring down this cartel. The Ghosts would intercept a distress signal where they would find a crashed truck surrounded by piles of cash and several dead cartel members. They report this incident to their supervisor, Karen Bowman, who then puts them in contact with one of her old friends, Valkyrie. It is here where the Ghosts are informed that one of Rainbow's operatives, Kivera, has gone AWOL, and it is suspected that she is responsible for these cartel members' deaths. Valkyrie requests assistance from the Ghosts to help intercept Kivera before it becomes a bigger incident. The Ghost team would then meet up with Twitch, who had been deployed to the area. Through their investigation, Rainbow and the Ghosts would learn that the undercover officer, which was captured, is actually Kivera's brother, Joao. Now that the situation was clear and they understand what Kivera was doing, the Ghosts alongside Twitch would intercept Kivera and assist her in rescuing Joao. During this mission, the operators would converse with the Ghost lead, Anthony Perryman, where he would mention a classified mission known as Operation Patriot, but the operators don't give him much information on the matter. The team eventually would be led to a chemical institute where Joao was being held, and with the Ghosts and Rainbow working in tandem, they were able to successfully extract him. When the group would return to Bowman and Valkyrie, things would get a little bit heated when Joao would refuse questioning from the Ghost supervisor, claiming that he has to go through his officials in the Brazilian Federal Police first. Tension would begin to grow, especially from Kivera, but Anthony would help defuse the situation, and Rainbow would leave with Joao. Back at Rainbow, Harry's program was continuing to grow. He recently recruited a Peruvian operative by the name of Amaru, and a Mexican specialist who has close ties to Amaru, known as Goyo. But this is when Harry would make one of his biggest decisions. Using the money that was seized from the White Mask's bank account, he, alongside the GSAC, would contract the private military Nighthaven to work alongside Rainbow. Now, Nighthaven is some of the best in the industry. Being founded by the wealthy Jamini Kalimohan Shah, after she was denied entry into the Indian military, Nighthaven would evolve from a private security company inside of India to an overseas private military company. During the early days of Nighthaven, Kali would meet a woman by the name of Anya Yankovic. Anya, who was fresh out of university where she excelled at robotics engineering, would soon be recruited by Kali and given the lead of Nighthaven's Quantum Concepts and Robotics R&D unit. Kali, striving to make Nighthaven the best and most profitable it can be, would grow her company with the most skilled agents she could find. One of them she would recruit early on would be a specialist from the Kenyan Navy who would be known as Wamai. As well as this, she would also secure an agent by the call sign of Denari, but he would remain in a special role, being her hidden enforcer who she would save for special missions unrelated to the operations of the other Nighthaven agents. With a large amount of money and a stable contract, Nighthaven were now working alongside Rainbow. Specifically, Kali, Wamai, and Nighthaven's soldiers would now be active in Rainbow's operations. But this wouldn't come without its criticisms, especially by some key operatives such as Ash. Well, with Nighthaven's recruitment and the stadium facility now complete, Harry would initiate his first training tournament. Seeing this as a way for the operators to train together with more synergy, by throwing a competitive aspect into it, Harry would introduce an unorthodox way of training. Not every operative would be on board with this, but Harry had an end goal in mind. The results and analyzation of these tournaments will help Harry determine the future leadership of Rainbow. The operators would utilize a technology developed by the R&D department known as SimSuits. This would allow the pellets shot by the operator's weapons to be accurately received under the operator's armor, relaying realistic damage outputs and shot information to give accurate results from the operator's performance. From Harry's perspective, this first tournament was a success. He was seeing operator leadership naturally evolving in the field, as well as getting psychological responses to help him further understand his team. A key part of his analysis was when he put Thatcher and Dokkaebi on the same team, where he would see the two operators gain a bit of understanding of each other's perspectives and help grow their bond. Following the conclusion of Harry's first tournament, he would recruit some untraditional operatives to his program. The first would be a man from Jordan under the alias of Oryx. Now, what makes Oryx different from the previous operators is that he has never served in any official organization. No military time, no law enforcement, nothing. Rather, when he was younger, he would be held in solitary confinement, which, based on the information he has given, seems like it was done unofficially. After being held against his will for 15 years, he would eventually break free, obtaining a new passport and traveling the world, where he would learn skills such as wrestling, tactical driving, and precision marksmanship. It is only when during one of these travels, he would come across Kaid's great fortress. And after Kaid would take him under his wing, Oryx would evolve from recruit to steward to instructor, and now the unofficial second in command. Although he doesn't come from a traditional military background, Harry trusts the reputation and judgment from Kaid, and Oryx is recruited to the team. The next operative would actually be a recommendation by Mira. A skilled scientist and astronaut by the alias of Ayana would pioneer topographical mapping software that allows her to project a real-time virtual copy of herself anywhere visible by satellite or drone. This advanced technology caught the eye of Mira, who saw her expertise to be a valuable asset to Rainbow's R&D department. Harry, again, trusting the judgment of one of his operatives, would subsequently recruit Ayana. Now, this would give us a glimpse into Harry's leadership, trusting the operator's decisions, putting them into decision-making scenarios like with his tournament. He sees that the future lays with the operators, and he is giving them that breathing room to expand and benefit the team. Although that Harry's program was fully underway and that Rainbow were training and preparing for his next tournament, that doesn't mean that they also weren't partaking in missions. They still had a job to do. One of these missions would take place in Paris, where two GIGN operatives, Twitch and Rook, would be deployed when law enforcement were overwhelmed by two large fires emerging from the downtown area. Having faced a similar situation during Harry's training program, Twitch and Rook suspected the fires had been started in order to distract from a major bank heist across the city. They would confirm this intel, being able to track and confront the robbers, who would begin to fire their weapons at them. One of these bullets would hit Rook in the head, who would be saved by his reinforced helmet. A motorcycle chase would then ensue across Paris, with Twitch and Rook eventually intercepting and stopping the robbers once and for all. This would be just a small glimpse into the many operations that Rainbow were partaking in globally. Meanwhile, Rainbow's relationship with Nighthaven was continuing to expand. Not only were Nighthaven thriving thanks to this contract, Rainbow were also seeing the benefits too, being able to utilize some of Nighthaven's QCR equipment, as well as the expertise of their agents. Nighthaven would also recruit a skilled former Norwegian Armed Forces and Norwegian Home Guard specialist with a heroic search and rescue reputation by the call sign of Ace, who Kali met during a joint UN operation in Somalia, which resulted in him saving her life. With Ace now also involved with the Rainbow contract, Harry would make his own recruitment recruitment of an ex-South African National Defence Force specialist, now turned anti-poacher, by the call sign of Melusi. And it is during this period where Rainbow would come in contact with a legendary ally. Samuel Fisher, the first ever operative for the Splinter Cell program, would have his life put at risk after an unknown enemy would force him on the run. As to provide him with protection, the Global Security Alliance Council would place Sam under the supervision of Rainbow. Sam, who knew of Rainbow's existence, would meet with Rainbow Six himself, Harry. And it is here where Sam would come to the decision that if he is gonna be here, he might as well make himself useful. Harry would appoint Sam to the Rainbow Operations Staff, where he would be given the call sign of Rainbow Zero, or just simply Zero. Sam would step up and take the role as instructor for the operators. He would help pass on the training that he himself experienced years prior. And thanks to a dosage of Finca's stims to help him keep up with his younger counterparts, Sam would offer training that these operators have never seen before. An unexpected component had now been added to Harry's program. As well as this, Nighthaven would also recruit an ex-detective for the Royal Thai Police who goes by Aruni. Originally starting her career as a private detective, her discovery of a bomb plot in Bangkok caught the attention of the aforementioned police. Her knack for connecting the dots between seemingly unrelated incidents earned her a grudging respect from Thailand's male-dominated law enforcement agencies. But this also came with hostility from numerous criminal syndicates. Aruni's time in the police would end during Operation Jackknife in 2014. In this joint operation between the FBI and the Royal Thai Police, Aruni, alongside the soon-to-be Rainbow operative Thermite, would discover a car bomb in the city. In an attempt to get this away from the civilian areas, Aruni would drive the car, whilst Thermite would attempt to defuse the bomb on the back. This would all go wrong when another vehicle would collide with theirs. The bomb would explode, throwing Thermite from the rear of the vehicle, whilst Aruni would be trapped in the cockpit. Thermite would manage to escape with severe burns on his hands, whereas Aruni would lose her left arm, her left leg, and have scarring all over the side of her body. It's when she would later go on to join Nighthaven, where OSA and the QCR department would develop advanced prosthetics for her to use, as well as the integration of the Surya Gate gadget. Aruni would make her way to Greece to join in the operators training, and it is here where her and Thermite would reunite. Thermite feels guilty for what happened to Aruni, but Aruni assures him that it wasn't his fault and the two of them are good friends. As the two of them would reconnect, Harry would be briefing the team leaders for this next tournament. With Nighthaven now being involved and Callie being on Ash's team, she raises her concerns. Harry already knows that Ash has a disliking to Callie, and that is one of the driving factors as to why they're on the same team. Vigil also raises his disliking of Mozzie, but it's these very reasons why Harry is doing this. If he can force the operators to push through their dislikings and build stronger relationships, it will benefit the future standing of the team. During this time before the tournament, Nighthaven would invite Fuse to train with them at the stadium. Following this training, Callie would question Fuse as to why he didn't take a shot when Aruni was in his line of fire. Since it's not Rainbow policy, Fuse never done it. But Callie says that that's not how Nighthaven's policy works, and it's only an arena training anyway, sort of showing Nighthaven not really taking Harry's tournament too seriously. And Fuse seems to be in a bit of an agreement with Callie. As they are talking, a Nighthaven shipment arrives at the stadium. She also likes the fact that her agents are spread out on different teams, because a win for one of them is a win for Nighthaven. Each accolade earned by a Nighthaven agent makes the organization more exclusive. More exclusivity means that they can demand a higher rate from their contract. As Callie says, for her, it's all about business. She's there to win to make Nighthaven look more valuable to Harry and the GSAC. She then shows off what was in this shipment, a brand new suit developed by OSA and Nighthaven's QCR department. This suit offers a number of benefits during combat, with Callie planning to wear it during the tournament. And when Fuse questions her if it's even Rainbow compliant and if she's even allowed to wear it, she kind of just shrugs it off, being like, this is my uniform, and that it's more or less compliant. Again, Callie doesn't really care about the playbook, she's just there to help push the reputation of Nighthaven and further the organization. And she concludes her conversation with Fuse saying that she's always looking for competent specialists. If he's ever considering a career shift, he knows where to find her. Harry's tournament would once again be underway, and as the teams would progress through his system, it would reach a finale between Team Mira and Team Ash. Now, whether the operators would like to admit it or not, this training was clearly having a positive effect. They were presenting some of their best teamwork and leadership skills, showing a great form of improvement through Harry's program. We get to see Thermite and Aruni facing off, playing into that fun dynamic we've seen between the two since their reunion. But the main moment between these two teams is when Ash and Dokkaebi are pinned down. Instead of aiding them from this position, Callie uses them as live bait, resulting in one of the pellets grazing Ash's ear while she was in the line of fire. And Dokkaebi would be fully exposed and eliminated. Because of this, Team Ash would win this competition, much to the happiness of Callie. But this was a breaking point for Ash. Callie completely disregarded the playbook, and if that same scenario took place in a real operation, would Callie have done the same with live rounds? An angered Ash would storm into the locker rooms and confront Callie. Sick and tired of Callie and Nighthaven, she punches Callie in the face, causing unrest between the operatives. Meanwhile, Sam and Harry, who were overlooking the match, seem a bit uncertain about the state of the operators. Harry has a look we've not really seen from him before. Has his plan begun to backfire? Can Rainbow and Nighthaven not coexist? Whereas Sam seems to be more suspicious of Callie and Nighthaven's motives. Well, despite this incident, Harry would continue with his plan. He had a third and final tournament he needed to conduct. But what was the reason for him doing this to begin with? Well, his plan, which was unknown to the operators themselves as to not affect the outcome, was to select 4 operators to lead Rainbow going forward. It wouldn't be just the team captains he would be testing, but all of the operators on the teams too. How would they stand up? Would they disagree with their captains? Everything was being monitored. Well, for his next internal tournament, he would assign Ash, Nomad, Kivera, and Callie to be 4 team leaders. Now, if you're going to be a leader for Rainbow, you also have to have good judgment. Due to this, he will assign them all a mission to recruit 1 new operative to their teams. Ash would reach out to an old friend known as the Man from Flores. Flores, whose real name is Santiago, grew up in Buenos Aires in Argentina. Despite having a military engineering degree, he would find himself unfulfilled with his work in the public sector and take up a pastime of burglary. But not petty theft of people's homes. Rather, he would rob powerful criminals and groups and help give back to the poor who were affected. A sort of Robin Hood-esque man. He would operate in the Flores district of Buenos Aires, hence his nickname. Well, in 2016, he got in too deep. His identity would be exposed when crime lords would track their stolen money. They learned that not only was it being given back to the community, but it was being used to pay for his mother's hospital bills. In retaliation for this group would murder Flores' mother, and he was forced to give up and flee. Around this time, the FBI, including Ash, had been in Buenos Aires investigating smuggling rings when she happened to come upon Flores. Ash would offer him asylum in the United States in exchange for providing evidence against the town's most ruthless crime lords. Flores would accept this offer and become an FBI informant. He would go on to start a new life in Los Angeles, opening his own food truck as well as meeting his husband. He attributes much of this to Ash and feels like he is in a life debt to her. Ash, joined by Castle and Goyo, would travel to LA to recruit Flores. Now, not only was she recruiting him for her team, but she had an ulterior motive here as well. She was suspicious of Callie, and she wanted Flores to investigate Nighthaven for her and find out if they're up to anything. Though hesitant at first, Harry would give the green light for this recruitment, and he would go on to be quite fond of Flores. Not only does he offer a set of skills when it comes to stealth, his degree in military engineering also benefits the R&D department. Meanwhile, Nomad would also call upon someone from her past as well. This would be a pilot from the Nakota territories of Saskatchewan. Known as Thunderbird, she would first come into contact with Nomad after she would give her medical attention and save her from a black bear, whilst Nomad was exploring the Canadian wilderness years prior. Thunderbird, who after joining the Canadian Armed Forces would work her way through flight school, remembering her mother's emphasis on the value of balance, felt that if the Armed Forces taught her how to take lives, then she should also know how to save them. She would complete her basic medical training and continue to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces as an aerial medic. Nomad saw her as a perfect addition to the team, and with Harry's approval, she was recruited. But that didn't come without a scare by Nook, who would take Thunderbird by surprise in her hangar to make sure that she was up to scratch with the Rainbow standard. Thunderbird would be able to hold her own, with her playfully putting a bandage on Nook's head, which would begin the bond between the two operatives. And as Nook says, "I like Nomad, I trust her, but Rainbow is bigger than Wargames. I had to be sure you're up for it." Meanwhile, with Callie, Ash was right to have her suspicions. It seems like Callie was intending to not renew the contract between Rainbow and Nighthaven. But that doesn't mean she wasn't impressed by Rainbow. Callie, who would initiate a plan to poach operatives from Rainbow and give them an offer to Nighthaven, would invite some of the operatives that impressed her to test new equipment at Nighthaven's labs in Singapore. As well as this, she would call upon Anya, her QCR lead, going by the call sign now of Osa. She would fly her out to Greece to not only be a part of her team, but also follow through with their plans. And finally, Kavera would travel to Ireland alongside Mozzie and Sledge to recruit a specialist from the Irish Garda known as Thorn. Now, Thorn already had a history with Sledge, and he knew what she was capable of. Being a part of the Garda's elite tactical branch, the Emergency Response Unit, only 5% of applicants passed the grueling 2-week entrance exam. Not only did she finish top of her class, but would routinely assist other applicants in getting through the training gauntlet. She would rise the ranks as a tactical weapons expert and would help redesign the unit's obstacle course, referring to the former design as a walk in the park. Kavera would attempt this very same training exercise designed by Thorn, which made her realize that she was a perfect fit for Rainbow. Not only this, when the two would return to Greece, they would use one of their off days to go sightseeing. Well, this is when they would notice some suspicious activity, and it turns out that they would uncover not only a movement of weapons, but stolen artifacts being sold on the black market. Things would begin to escalate, and the pair would eventually chase down this group on horseback. This would result in the getaway car crashing and the suspects apprehended. But Kavera and Thorn would also get arrested in the process. Now, of course, when the higher-ups learned about this, they were able to go free without any question, for reasons the police officers aren't paid enough to know. They then get a bit of a scolding from Sam, who tells them to get back to training. Now we're in the run-up to Harry's third and final tournament. Sam takes this opportunity to interview the 4 new recruits to the program.
That doesn't smell half bad. What's cooking?
It's called perico, meaning parrot.
You're cooking a parrot.
No. It's a Latin dish. Scrambled eggs, tomatoes, green onions, same colors as the bird. Mama always liked to add a little kick. You want some?
Thanks, but I'm more of a meat and potatoes guy.
You need to expand your horizons. You might like what you try.
Speaking of expanding horizons, how's your new assignment? It must be a big change from knocking off villas in Long Beach.
Well, it's not so different, to be honest. I get in, I get the job done, then I get out.
You're not worried that approach might be a little too simple against Nomad's team?
Sometimes a plan falls through and you have to get creative, but you need to stay sharp. That's why I came down here. Cooking keeps my hands busy and my mind focused.
Well, they do say breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Everything is possible on a full stomach. Why are you here, by the way? I thought Harry asked all the questions.
This is off the books, Flores. I know you've been gathering intel on Callie for Ash.
Me? The lowly cook? You won me.
Do me a favor. Over the next few days, I need you to tell me if Nighthaven does anything out of the ordinary.
Like what?
Trust your instincts. You'll know it when you see it.
If you say so, Jefe.
Okay. I changed my mind. I'll have some of that parrot.
Eso.
Thought I might find you here.
Well, you got a busted chopper collecting dust out here. You better believe you'd know where to find me. Hand me that torque wrench, would you?
That was one hell of a match. You've come a long way since you joined.
I honestly wasn't sure what to expect when I came here. But that was awesome.
Care to elaborate?
Until today, my favorite sound in the world was a chopper engine firing up. The moan and groan of the blades catching momentum, But my team's voices, cutting through the chaos to coordinate and help each other, that was something else.
I guess we're not used to relying on someone else to get the job done, eh? We're never too old to learn new tricks. Take my word for it.
You said it. I'm used to flying solo, you know? It's been a learning experience. I have Nook to thank for bringing me up to speed.
You must have made an impression on her. She's not usually so forthcoming.
It's strange, but I feel like we understand each other. Forgiveness and healing come more easily when you drop the pretense and pleasantries. That stunt in the hangar prepared me for this tournament.
So you're saying you trust her on the field?
With my life.
Good. Trust in your comrades. I'll help you face what comes next. Lose something?
This guy. You shouldn't sneak up on people like that.
Sorry. Old habits.
Bad habits should be broken, regardless of their age.
That's some keen philosophy. Nighthaven sure knows how to pick 'em. Taking an evening stroll through R&D, I see?
What? Oh, yes, just reviewing the standard equipment. Knowing your gear is half the battle.
So your team's ready for the next match.
Can't say I speak for everyone. Kali's the captain, not me.
Okay. What about you, then?
Normally, we train to counter insurgent groups that can barely hold an AK. Fighting teams of highly trained specialists, it's hard to calculate the outcome. So no, I'm not ready.
But the final match is tomorrow. Kavera's team won't make it easy.
I know. Hence the stroll to Mira's lab. I'm compiling data. I said calculating the outcome was hard, not impossible. I'll be ready tomorrow.
I can see why Callie values you. You never let the cracks show.
What cracks? You know my stuff is bulletproof.
I was asked here to aid in the simulation, to observe and report. You want to know what I see in you?
Go ahead.
You're a good soldier, but a lousy liar. And if Callie thinks that she can go...
Stop. You don't know us. Say what you want about me, but if you insult her, you'll be observing and reporting my foot up your ass.
Yep. You'll be ready. Why don't you try lifting the heavy ones?
Spare me the ball busting, Fisher. Not in the mood. Don't know if you noticed, but we're losing.
You could easily turn it around. What's stopping you?
I'm not giving up. I'm just... recalibrating.
Winding up won't do you much good. Maybe you need to relax a bit before getting back out there.
This is me relaxing.
You look like you want to rip the roof off a truck.
I just might. Listen, thanks for checking in, but I'd really like to be left alone right now.
I'll be quick. With the changes ahead, I wanted to get your read on Ella and Sophia.
The sisters, yeah? What about them?
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but the first half felt like it was personal to them.
Trust me, when it comes to siblings, it's always personal.
So you think this is normal?
Yeah, about as normal as throwing 10 of the world's most highly trained soldiers into a pissing contest.
Top brass prefers to think of it as a heightened combat simulation. But I get your point.
Look, I'll say this. I've been training with Sophia. She's focused, serious. This isn't a game to her.
And Ella?
She's not on my team. But I can assume the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What's it to you?
Probably nothing.
Great. I'll get back to it then. Oh, stay clear of the weights. Wouldn't want you to pull something.
Never change, Skiing.
After multiple matches and the operators giving their very best, Harry's third and final tournament would conclude. This time, however, things were different. Things were more personal. This was a boiling point for many of the operators, and a lot of stuff was about to change massively. Not only had Harry now completed his plan, but so had Nighthaven. Callie, alongside the rest of Nighthaven, would break away from Rainbow following the end of this tournament, but they wouldn't be the only ones. Multiple Rainbow operatives would leave the team as well as their orgs and join Nighthaven in the private sector. Now ex-Rainbow operatives Smoke, Finka, IQ, Pulse, and Ella would now work as Nighthaven agents. We would get to see the divide between Ella and Zofia through their upbringing, and especially after the death of their father. Not only did this represent the relationship breaking apart between the two sisters, but also mirrored what was happening with Rainbow and Nighthaven. As Zofia would remain loyal to Rainbow, Ella would leave. And each of these operatives would have their own reason for doing this. Not only are Nighthaven a powerful group, but Ella saw this as an opportunity for a fresh start and to distance herself from Zofia. A similar case for Pulse. There was a lot of baggage he had in Rainbow, especially with a previous relationship he had with Hibana. The opportunity to push Seaburn research even further was a massive drawing point for Finka. Her body was beginning to become resilient to the treatment she was having for her neuropathy, a disease she was diagnosed with at the age of 9, which causes a slow degeneration of muscles and the loss of sensations in limbs. Being born after the fallout of the Chernobyl disaster, Finka has been fighting her disease ever since. The opportunity to now lead this unit in Nighthaven with independent private funding was too good for her to turn down. IQ was very impressed by the work of OSA and the QCR department, and saw Nighthaven as an environment where she can thrive. And finally, Smoke always acts in the interest of his daughter, who he would adopt prior to joining Rainbow. He liked the benefits in which Nighthaven were offering, and saw it as a way to give his daughter the best life she can have. For Callie, her mission was a success. And although Harry would lose numerous operators, his program was now complete. 4 operators have been chosen to lead Rainbow into its future, dividing Rainbow into 4 separate squads, with each having a specialty and having one of these operators as their captain. The first squad is Red Hammer, led by Captain Thermite. Red Hammer is not known for its delicate touch. When they are called in, all bets are off. They tear down anything and eliminate anyone that stands in their way. They are unshakable and unstoppable, best suited for high-risk operations where casualties are all but guaranteed. They bring everything sharp and volatile, inflicting as much damage as necessary before the enemy can retaliate. Captain Jordan Trace and his squad are some of the most resilient individuals, having been evaluated as the most likely to survive dangerous missions through their strength, unquestioning natures, and trust in each other. It's implied that one should not look too closely at what they had to do. The operators in Red Hammer are of course their captain, Thermite, as well as Kaid, Gridlock, Tachanka, Blackbeard, Fuse, Capcan, Buck, Sledge, Ash, Oryx, Thorn, Goyo, and Amaru. The next squad is the Viper Strike squad, led by Captain Hibana. With a multidisciplinary roster, Viper Strike serves as a versatile unit, suited for any operation. Operating by the book, they guarantee that any task they take on will be done exactly as expected, regardless of the complications. They are the first choice for a mission that needs to be done quickly and cleanly, like surgical strikes. Captain Yumiko Imigawa heads Viper Strike with dedication and precision, using her years of international experience to keep Rainbow connected and ever expanding. Among most countries' elite military and police forces, her squad is unofficially known as the face of Rainbow, and she carries that weight with confidence. Viper Strike consists of Captain Hibana, as well as Thatcher, Alibi, Mute, Dokubi, Jaeger, Echo, Jackal, Blitz, Maestro, Mira, and Rook. The third squad is Wolfguard, led by Captain Doc. Described as the world's foremost humanitarian military unit, Wolfguard is known for its compassionate and careful approach. It's a sound choice for high-visibility operations that occur in close proximity with civilian populations where collateral damage is not an option. Most of its members are trained in field medicine and specialize in protection of some kind. Captain Gustav Kadeb leads this squad, having good relationships with his subordinates and an immaculate image with world governments and the press. While he and the rest of Wolfguard were brought together to apply their skills in sensitive missions for the good of all, their popularity cannot be overlooked. It will always be a factor for their deployment. Joining Captain Doc are the operatives Lion, Clash, Montagna, Twitch, Nomad, Bandit, Frost, Ying, Castle, Thunderbird, and Melusi. The fourth and final squad is Ghost Eyes, led by Captain Kivera. People and information are two of the world's most powerful resources. To obtain leverage, or even eliminate them, Rainbow needs a unit specialized in stealth and intelligence. Ghost Eyes operate in the shadows, slipping in where others can't, doing the work that requires discretion and reveals unpleasant truths. Captain Taina Pereira is the prime example of a covert specialist who excels in cooperative context. She's the perfect commanding officer for this squad, who will make good use of her fearless and inquisitive nature. Ghost Eyes is not about loyalty or rigid hierarchy. It's about asking questions, constantly evaluating and re-evaluating, and acting on information that likely hasn't reached top brass yet. Alongside Captain Kivera, Ghost Eyes will consist of Maverick, Vigil, Zofia, Legion, Valkyrie, Glaz, Nook, Warden, Ayana, Mozzie, Flores, and Zero. With this, Sam would now actively be working on the field alongside the operatives and begin to get ready to get his hands dirty. Even though the operators still look up to him for guidance, he trusts Kivera's leadership and is happy to follow her. With the creation of these 4 squads, Harry's plan was finally complete. Although Nighthaven would now benefit from multiple trained specialists, the two sides now no longer had anything to do with each other, and depending on who you ask, this was for better or for worse. The operators and captains would have some time to settle into their new roles. Although Harry is still acting as 6, his squad leaders are working very well in their positions, with the operators now having greater decision-making powers and control. Meanwhile, in Japan, the CEO of Yahata Data Security would go for a stroll through a market alongside his bodyguard, Kana. Now, Yahata Data Security would be a largely successful company, with Rainbow even having accounts registered under them. Well, despite her recommendations, Yahata wanted to take in the atmosphere of this market. He wanted to experience the delicacies they had to offer. This peaceful outing would soon go south, when several men disguised throughout the market would begin opening fire on Yahata. Kana would provide cover for Yahata, using her range of skills to fight the men off, whilst the others would flee. However, despite her best efforts, a stray bullet would hit Yahata in the chest, and he would die from his injuries. Kana, now infuriated at not only the failures she believes she has, but the death of her friend, demands answers. She would take one of the bullet casings at the scene and make contact with one of her ex-colleagues in the police force, Hibana. Not necessarily knowing of Rainbow's existence, Azami knew that Hibana moved on to a higher force. And when Hibana would take a look at this bullet casing, she would realize that this was made by Nighthaven's QCR department. Now, this would immediately draw concern by the squad leader. She would call in 2 of her Viper Strike operatives, Thatcher and Jackal, to come to Japan and assist in an investigation. Not only is it alarming that Nighthaven may be involved in assassinations, but ex-Rainbow operatives now work with them too. Rainbow know how protective Osa and Nighthaven are of their gear, so it's very unlikely that this was just ordnance that they sold. Yahata's death would have a profound effect on Kana, and she would refuse to go by her real name until she got revenge. She would don the mantle of Azami, the Japanese name for the Thistle. The market, which was now a cordoned off crime scene by the police, would be the rendezvous point where Azami and Hibana would meet up with Jackal and Thatcher. The area would already be cleared by the police, but Jackal would use his Inox scanner to track 2 assailants that escaped, one of them being badly wounded. Viper Strike, joined by Azami, would follow Jackal's lead, in which they would come across an old factory. Jackal and Thatcher would throw around some friendly banter, with Thatcher referring to Smoke, who is now a Nighthaven agent, as a backstabbing shite. Jackal's intel would be correct, and the last 2 assailants would be camping out in this warehouse. After disabling the lights with his EMPs, Thatcher would be able to take one of them by surprise and hold him at knife point. Azami would then begin to interrogate the man alongside Thatcher. It is where this man says, "We got an encrypted message for an assassination job. When we saw the target was Yahata, we thought it was a joke. But then we got a crate. And what, my good man, was in this crate?" asks Thatcher. "Weapons, intel on Yahata's movements, and money. Lots of money." Jackal would be able to pin down this other man, who was by this crate previously mentioned. This man continues from what the first man said, saying, "After we came back here, we got another message." "What did it say?" says Jackal. "To stay put," the man replies. Just then, a large attack helicopter begins to open fire on the warehouse. The operators had been led directly into a trap. Azami would be able to provide the team with some cover, and as the operators would escape, so would the helicopter. Hibana would say if they're working for Nighthaven, they just declared a war. Following this mission, Hibana would recruit Azami into Viper Strike, having the power to do so being a squad leader. Viper Strike would then relay this information to the rest of Rainbow. They would initiate a full investigation of Nighthaven. Whoever perpetrated this seemed to know the operators well and knew how they would handle this situation. Harry would begin to do his own investigation of the matter, whilst the operators would take charge. Rainbow would devise a plan to infiltrate Nighthaven's headquarters in Singapore. Intel would suggest that the architect who designed Nighthaven's base would get caught up with the wrong crowd and be held against his will by a militia. Wolfguard would be called upon to extract this architect, which Rainbow will then use to gain info about Nighthaven's facility. Wolfguard would take control here as to prioritize the safety of the architect. Doc would use this as an opportunity to deploy his newest recruit, a Belgian Special Forces operative by the codename of Sense. Doc was impressed by their reputation of minimizing casualties without compromising objectives. He saw Sense as a perfect fit for Wolfguard, and alongside Monty and Lion on the field, with Doc and Twitch providing intel from a nearby vehicle, the trio would enter this facility where the architect was being held. The operators would work in tandem, using their gadgets, skills, and teamwork to prioritize the safety of the hostage and the clean execution of these militia members. This would be an important time for Lion as well. Operating under the leadership of Doc, someone that he bashed heads with even before their time in Rainbow, the two would begin to become more understanding of each other, something which is again a product of Harry's leadership. Maybe every operator didn't see it right away, but he knew them more than some of them even knew themselves. Wolfguard would return to their HQ alongside the architect. Whilst they would treat him for his injuries, Doc and Ying would brief the team on the current intel they had, after the architect would provide them with the blueprints to Nighthaven's HQ. As Ying would say, they keep everything secure on a private server, including QCR inventory. With that intel, we could connect them to the equipment that was used to kill Yahata. Unfortunately, the server can't be hacked externally. We have to be on site to download the server data. Even with the architect's credentials to enter the building, we're walking into the lion's den. This needs to be done quietly. And that's not our expertise, says Doc. Keres' team is currently deployed in South America, but a few of our operatives are on their way to Singapore to take over this leg of the mission. For now, Wolfguard's work is done. So this mission would be handed over to Ghost Eyes for infiltration. However, Sense has an issue with this, claiming that the well-being of the architect is still in their hands, and that they should also be sent along in this mission to protect the architect. They go no further than the entrance of the base, and that is where Ghost Eyes will take over. Doc will agree with Sense and send them on this mission as well. Sense, alongside one of Keres' operatives, will disguise themselves as Nighthaven soldiers and enter the base undercover. They guide the architect to the main entrance, where they will use his credentials to enter the building. That is, until they are intercepted by Ace and Pulse. He begins to question why the architect is here. The work on the next sector doesn't start until next month. The architect would play this off, saying that blasting materials for demo needed recalibration, and this was Callie's orders. Ace was going to call this into Callie, but that is when the architect intercepted, saying that he could look into that recreational area he suggested, which would be a volleyball court. This seems to be an addition to the base that Callie wasn't necessarily wanting, so Ace was happy to have the architect listen to his idea, and this would help diffuse the tension as Ace and Pulse would go on their way. The team would make their way down to a side entrance, where they would discover that the architect's credentials had been revoked. As they were planning a new way to break in, a Nighthaven soldier would spot them and question them as to why they're patrolling this sector. The Ghost Eyes operative would swiftly take this soldier down, and before they can shoot this soldier, Sense intervenes, saying that they don't know if Nighthaven's the enemy yet. Even if he wakes up, it's better than a dead man with their names on it. This is a recon mission, not elimination. They would keep this man alive and use his prints to enter the building. Now that they had an entry into the base, Sense and the architect's job was done. They would leave this Ghost Eyes operative to do their mission, while Sense would extract the architect safely. And as the pair would fly away, we would learn that this Ghost Eyes operative was Nook. This mission was now under the control of Ghost Eyes. As the sun would set, Nook would wait until the cover of darkness to strike. As night would fall, the unconscious Nighthaven soldier would be discovered by Smoke, as well as one of Nighthaven's latest agents, Grim. A skilled ex-member of the Singaporean Armed Forces turned mercenary, Grim would investigate this infiltration after shots would be heard from inside the building. He'd follow this trail of chaos into Nighthaven's server room, where he'd see that data had been downloaded from the system's terminal. That is when Nook would emerge from the shadows, stabbing Grim in the leg and beginning her getaway. Grim wasn't going to let her escape that easy though. He would deploy the Kawan mechanical tracking bees, small advanced drones developed by Nighthaven. He would be able to pursue Nook to one of the lab rooms, where they would again face off. This time, Grim would be ready, taking a slice at her veil, exposing the bottom half of her face. The two trained specialists would then engage in hand-to-hand combat, with Grim getting the upper hand, holding her at knife point, as he would demand her to hand over the data key. But Nook had a contingency. She would detonate explosives planted in the room, being able to escape Grim's hold. This explosion would create an exit point for Nook to escape, where she would be extracted by Sam Fisher, who is now actively working on the field. Grim relays the information to Smoke that Nighthaven QCR shipment records have now been stolen. This would be a huge piece of intel in Rainbow's investigation, whereas Nighthaven now have their own issue at hand. They've just been infiltrated and had information stolen from them for reasons they don't know. 3 hours later, Callie would gather the Nighthaven agents. They were able to get a single blurred image of the perpetrator who infiltrated their base. It seems that during the explosion to escape Grim, Nook would partially damage her equipment, no longer fully cloaking herself on Nighthaven's cameras. Callie initiates a full investigation. They need to find out who stole the data key and why. Osa claims that the QCR records are heavily encrypted, and even though someone stole them, they won't get very far with the information. But as Callie says, we're talking about someone who successfully infiltrated Nighthaven, and they should assume that they are capable. Callie puts Grim in charge of this mission, ordering him to brief each member of the team individually and see if he can learn anything about the infiltrator. Wamai acknowledges that this person is phenomenal at hand-to-hand combat. Osa points out the fact that they were using a certain tech to elude security cameras. Aruni would say they're like a ghost, even comparing them to Thai folklore. Pulse acknowledges the tactical anticipation of setting up the explosives as a plan B. Putting all this information together, Finka believes that this is none other than one of her ex-colleagues, Nook. Grim would relay this information to Callie, where she would lay down some ground rules as Grim begins to travel to further his investigation. She claims that they cannot make an enemy out of Rainbow, at least not yet. She presents the following rules to Grim: do not infiltrate any Rainbow compounds, and no killing of any Rainbow operatives. Reclaiming the data key is no longer part of the mission objective. They have to assume that Rainbow already has the intel. But she wants to make a statement that Nighthaven can't be pushed around. She orders Grim to find Nook's identity and use it as leverage against Rainbow. Grim would begin his investigation and follow Callie's orders. He would first take the knife that Nook lodged in his leg and bring it to a specialist. The man would acknowledge that this is a military-issued knife, with some modifications and customization. Grim would intimidate this man and pressure him into finding who was responsible for designing this knife. A day later, Grim would track down this artist, who is connected to deep pockets in Prague. Grim would threaten this artist by holding him over the side of a building, demanding a name. Using this intel, he would track down a banker with ties to the black market operations. He would track down and follow this man onto a flight, interrogating him in the bathroom to get the address of his contact. This would lead him to a group of heavily funded mercenaries. He would hold one of them at knife point, and using his Kawan bees, would kill 6 of these men from the other side of the wall, thanks to the information being relayed. As to force the final mercenary to start talking, he would begin to remove this man's fingers, one at a time. This man would finally give up information, and this is when Grim would travel to a theme park, where he would intercept a man spending time with his family. He would separate this man from his family and bring him into a staff-only area. This man knows a lot of intel, secrets of the world's most powerful, perhaps a member of the GSAC. Grim would threaten this man's life and get the final piece of information he needed. He would travel to Nook's house, where she would be attending to her garden, and notice that her door is open. she would enter her kitchen to find Grim sitting at her table. Now on guard, she would offer him tea, remaining civil as she assesses the situation. Grim would tell her that his real name is Charlie, and she would question how he found this place. He would then place her knife on the table, giving her an indicator. As she goes to take a sip, she throws the scalding tea at Grim's face, grabbing the knife, whilst Charlie grabs a butcher's knife behind him. The two once again face off, with this time Nook getting the upper hand and pinning Grim down. But Grim reveals that he's not here to kill her, rather to tell her that Nighthaven now has all of her secrets. And he came to deliver a message: if she was to cross Nighthaven again, there will be consequences. This would have an effect on Nook. This is her safe haven, a place for her family, a place that not even her closest friends at Rainbow know about. Nighthaven are walking a fine line here. They know that Rainbow has higher jurisdiction and could legally affect their operations at any time. But this is now an asset that Rainbow can't afford to lose. Nook's identity poses a risk to national security, with evidence suggesting that she may be the Princess of Denmark. If the media were to catch wind that she was a part of a covert unit that is tied up in international affairs, it may cause issues with her nation. Following this information, Nook would make contact with her captain Kivera and go on a period of leave from Rainbow. Around the same time where Wolfguard were rescuing the Architect, Kivera would be training her newest recruit to Ghost Eyes, a Colombian specialist by the call sign of Solis. Having a passion for computers, Solis would be a part of Colombia's national police. Being proficient in ballistics and close combat, she would also work in counterintelligence with the National Intelligence Directorate. She would live a secret life online, monitoring systemic corruption through the dark web and ultimately discovering transactions that tied several officials to trafficking rings in South America. Following this crackdown, she would appear on the radar of Flores, who would recommend her to Captain Kivera for recruitment. Flores would greet the newly recruited Solis, and the two of them would use their skills to create the Spec.io electro sensor. Being built off of a prototype that Mirror originally designed as an upgrade for IQ, this device would be shelved after IQ would leave Rainbow for Nighthaven. Flores and Solis would request this prototype from Mirror, and with Flores' skills and Solis' vision, they would complete the Spec.io electro sensor, being able to relay real-time information of electronics to Solis' view. Ghost Eyes were preparing for Operation Sunset R&D, with this being the first mission with Solis. After some missteps during the training, Kivera would unassign her from this mission. But when Kivera asks what Zero thinks, he says to give her a shot. Zero would give some wisdom to Solis, saying that she reminds him of a younger version of himself. He reminds her that she wouldn't be here to begin with if she wasn't doing impressive work back home. He helps ease her mind and lower her stress, and the two throw around some banter as well, showing that although Kivera is the leader, Zero's opinion is still respected, and they look up to him. Kivera would now initiate Operation Sunset R&D, which would see them infiltrating a company by the same name, located in London. Although this weapon manufacturer isn't Nighthaven, they seem to have some dark illegal underground ties and are in the possession of a prototype device that is capable of cracking some of the strongest encryptions, and Rainbow need this to access Nighthaven's data key. A Ghost Eyes squad consisting of Kivera, Solis, Mozzie, Zofia, Zero, and Maverick scale this building and silently enter. Solis makes note of multiple cameras and devices, which Mozzie silently takes out. The team would continue to quietly progress through this building, where they would come across multiple guards and take them down. After scanning a room, Solis claims it is clear, but she feels like there should be more in that room that she's not seeing. Kivera orders her to give a solid yes or no answer, so Solis claims it's clean. Zero breaches the doorway as Zofia, Kivera, and Mozzie enter, where they are met by automatic turrets. The operators are able to shoot them before anyone is hurt, but this causes Solis to get a scolding from Kivera, asking her how she missed those. She tells Solis that she's no longer on the team, as one of these men, who are still conscious, activates more of these turrets in the room. As the turrets would begin to focus on Kivera, Solis would activate an overdrive of her helmet. This caused the turret system to focus all its fire on the output coming from Solis' helmet. This would divert the gunfire as the team take down these turrets. Zero would secure the intel, as Solis would earn respect from her captain. Following this mission, Ghost Eyes would enjoy a drink and a meal created by Flores. The team would unwind and talk about their mission, with Solis showing Zero a picture of her family. As the team would continue to bond with their new recruit, Kivera would pass Solis the Nighthaven data key. With the intel gathered from Sunset R&D, and Solas's skills being able to crack the encryption on Nighthaven's data key, Rainbow would learn the truth about Nighthaven. Nighthaven themselves would also now get a full grasp of the situation. Both Rainbow and Nighthaven would learn that Nighthaven QCR weaponry had been stolen and sold on the black market. Low-level thugs and militias are using Nighthaven gear, some of the best in the industry. Nighthaven would gain intel about an upcoming black market sale and prepare to intercept and take their ordnance back. However, Ghost Eyes would infiltrate Nighthaven's runway and confront them. Callie tells Rainbow that they didn't kill Yahata, but Rainbow already know this, and that's not why they're here. There is now Nighthaven weaponry flooding the black market, and they're not letting a private military clean up this mess. Rainbow would ground Nighthaven, telling them to stay out of their way and that they'll deal with the ordnance. Even with the leverage Nighthaven have over Nook, that isn't enough. This is a direct order by NATO to stand down. Nighthaven have to comply, or stuff may get messy for them. Ghost Eyes would begin prepping for this mission alongside Red Hammer. While Rainbow and Nighthaven weren't the only groups investigating this stolen ordnance, Harry had also been doing some digging himself. And using his position as well as his intelligence, he would begin to piece stuff together. And there was one thing that would stand out to Harry during his investigation. A person, well, rather, an alias. One simply known as Deimos.
1:40 a.m. With the last year's funding cuts, we cannot operate at the level we need. I've stated my case again and again, but my concern falls on deaf ears. I can only hope that what wakes them up isn't a great tragedy. 2:22 a.m. Filed a declassification request for files related to early Rainbow missions. They're routinely redacted, but it's the only way I can connect the dots. To find out who Deimos really is. Putting a name to a face may not stop him, but when you know the why, you can begin to find the weaknesses. 4:04 a.m. Just doesn't make sense. There's only one clear candidate, but now I need to go back over my notes, over the files, because it doesn't add up. It's not possible that 8:29 a.m. Searching for the real identity of this Deimos. A piece of evidence will point one direction, but another suggests the opposite. Whoever he is a master of subterfuge. And he's been hiding for a long, long time. 12:43 p.m. Deimos has all the hallmarks of being a former Rainbow operative. Like everyone here, he is a force to be reckoned with. But when freed of the bounds of morality and protocol, he becomes much more dangerous. Which is why I'm not as confident as usual that if he comes after us, we'll be able to hold our own. 1:22 p.m. Rainbow has been in somewhat of a crisis recently. I sense instability amongst the operators, infighting. I try to be as strong a leader as I can, but I lead with the mind, and sometimes I wonder if that will always be enough. 3:33 p.m. The captains have all been so focused on Nighthaven recently that I worry it's led the unit as a whole to be too single-minded. Intelligence has been warning of something much bigger on the horizon. We can't afford to miss it. 8:19 p.m. Every good leader knows authority must be passed on eventually. I've done what I can. Changed the culture for the better. But it cannot always be me. There are many who could quite ably fill my shoes. 10:01 p.m. To do this job well, you have to give everything over to it. I'm coming to terms with the fact that other areas of my life have been greatly neglected. One day I hope to make it up to her. Hello?
Have a look.
At what, exactly?
Well, this is how Rainbow dies.
Confirmed. They're spread out well enough. Operators take positions.
Kavera.
Sit rep on hostiles. I have eyes on 15 mercs surrounding the QCR weaponry. Make that 14. Neutralize the opposition and extract the ordnance.
Red Hammer, take point. Ghost Eyes, support. On my mark.
Watch out!
You're up.
She's up there! Kill her!
Yeah, on the left. Kavera! Anytime now.
Kill them!
Nighthaven really fucked up letting their gear fall into the wrong hands.
That's why we have to extract it.
Let's finish this.
Ash. Run!
That's gotta be tough to watch. Wholesale Nighthaven weaponry is a scary thing. It's also the perfect bait. Call me sentimental, but I'm a little disappointed they fell for it. You know, Rainbow used to be feared in my time. A covert unit of apex killers, and you turned it into the fucking ice capades. You disgraced my unit, Harry.
It's their unit now. And the disgrace is yours, Deimos.
What comes next is the squad's fall. One by one. Every operator dies. I guess I wanted to thank you for making it so easy for us.
My job was never to lead Rainbow, but rather to help them lead themselves. Now, if you don't mind, I happen to find you exceedingly fucking boring.
Yeah, well, don't tell me when I was swinging.
Rainbow's director is dead. An ex-Rainbow operative known simply as Deimos emerges from the shadows, orchestrating a false conflict between Rainbow and Nighthaven, driving them further apart and diverting their attention. 5 Rainbow operatives would be involved in Deimos' strike, with one of them, Ash, being critically injured and placed into a coma. Harry's body would be discovered and the information would be relayed to the rest of Rainbow. The 4 squad leaders would now take control of the team, and Rainbow were now at war. Rainbow would immediately begin their retaliation and gather as much intel on Deimos as they could. Viper Strike would initiate Operation Commanding Force. Joined by their new recruit Brava, a Brazilian Cote operative who is the cousin of Capitão and was responsible for saving Capitão years prior after he was captured by the cartel and would lose his eye. The 2 cousins would join Captain Habana for this mission as Rainbow Intelligence was working overtime. Not only were they able to infiltrate one of Deimos' planes, he would also be present. We get to see a large amount of money being transported by Deimos, as well as Capitão telling Brava if she gets the shot to take out Deimos, to take it. As Deimos makes his way further to the plane, she would use the Kludge drone to hack a mobile turret and use it against the armed men on this flight. Hibana would use this opening to pursue Deimos through the aircraft. Deimos, realizing that he's under attack by Rainbow, with no regard for his inventory or his men, would open the cargo bay doors, causing Hibana to fall back and be knocked unconscious, whilst Capitao and Brava hold on for their lives. Falling debris would knock Capitao over, as his cousin saves him by holding his hand. That is then when she is presented with a clear kill shot for Deimos, which Capitao urges her to do. He yells at Brava to let him go and kill Deimos, but she can't bring herself to do it. She chooses the life of Capitao over the death of Deimos. He would be able to get away as Hibana regains consciousness and the team is able to safely land the aircraft. Now, this Deimos situation would require all hands on board. Hibana would request Mira to get out of the lab and come back to field work. Brava would also defend her decision to save Capitao over killing Deimos, saying to Azami, "If we're going to bring him down, we should do it by the book. This is not the time for vigilante justice." Now, Azami isn't the only one disappointed in Brava for not taking the shot. Brava would travel to the Hereford Military Hospital, where Ash would be in her coma, being overlooked by an injured Thermite. Hibana would relay information to her fellow squad member that someone planted intel on Deimos' plane, the geolocation of a compound in Brazil. Hibana informs Thermite that Brava is going to lead a reconnaissance operation there to find more. But Thermite isn't having any of it. He says, "Hibana, that son of a bitch put Ash in a coma. He killed Harry. Brava had a line of fire on Deimos and didn't take the shot." Hibana replies, "I'm aware of what's at stake, Thermite. This is a Viper Strike operation. You don't get a say." "New intel says Deimos is getting ready for another strike as we speak," says Thermite. "We need a win here." "Then allow me to take point," Brava interrupts. "Sir, the clock is ticking. I know the area, the people, and how to access the compound unnoticed. With me leading, we save weeks of prep. Weeks we don't have. Like you said, now or never." A reluctant Thermite will agree with Brava being sent to this compound, but he has a message for her. "If you see Deimos, you pull the fucking trigger." "Yes, Captain," replies Brava. "I won't make the same mistake twice." We then cut to Ouro Preto in Brazil, where we can see Brava leading a strike team joined by Jaeger and Alibi. Jaeger and Brava will make their way closer to the compound, as Alibi holds back to provide reconnaissance. That is until Alibi's position is exposed and a gunman shoots her in the head. Well, at least he thought he did. This would be one of Alibi's decoys, and the real Alibi would be behind him and takes him out. It would now be fully open fire, as Jaeger and Brava take cover and return shots back to these men. Brava throws a grenade and uses it as an opportunity to push. One of these gunmen attempt to do the same thing, but is caught by Jaeger's ADS, and he is put down by a long-range shot from Alibi. Brava and Jaeger are preparing to enter the compound, when the building erupts in an explosion from a nearby rocket. As the compound goes up in flames, Brava believes she lost the intel. The person responsible for this explosion appears from the tree line, and the squad pursues them. They immediately surrender and say, "You don't want to shoot, trust me." This man claims that these soldiers already knew that they were coming there, and the building was laced with explosives, and he blew it up to save their lives. "That's convenient," Brava says. "Another option is that you knew what we were after and destroyed our intel." "I didn't destroy the intel," this person says. "I am the intel. I'm the one who planted the geolocation." "Then why all of this? Why not come to us directly?" says Brava. "I was stuck. Deimos. He's everywhere. It's a long story. My only option was to get your attention on this compound and hope you'd send a team. I can help you stop him." Brava would take this person into Rainbow's custody and bring them to Hibana and Thermite for questioning. This man would reveal himself as Emil Svensson. Born in Sweden, when he was younger, his parents would enroll him in every science class they could find after he showed a fascination with animal biology. On track to attend his hometown's university to pursue his passion, his focus would shift following his mandatory military service. He learned that he had an affinity for physical fitness and tactical organization and became especially interested in how combat affects soldiers' emotional states. Following his military service, he would study neurochemistry and join the Swedish Armed Forces, quickly earning his way up. As a communicator in the Special Operations Group, He expanded his skill set and aimed to develop strategies that would improve his peers' performance. When his project to create formulas that alter soldiers' emotions was denied, his instance caused him to be discharged. Estranged from his family and made a pariah in the scientific and military communities, he had few options when Deimos approached him. Fenrir wanted to create a formula that would stop soldiers from experiencing PTSD and the other negative effects of combat. He finally found someone that would allow him to pursue his vision and financially support it. Svensson would develop his formula until it became evident that he was being used to create a dangerous weapon. A prototype of this formula that had the adverse effect of turning you violent would be unleashed on Fenrir's colleagues by Deimos. This would be a heartbreaking moment for Emil. He only ever wanted his research to do good in the world, to help people, but now it was being used as a weapon. Emil would investigate Deimos' true intentions, and that's when he'd discover Rainbow. He would take all of his work and flee. Now in Rainbow's custody, he wants to help them as much as possible to stop Deimos. Thermite, seeing this as the win Rainbow needed, would recruit Emil under the call sign of Fenrir to his squad Red Hammer, but this would come at the disagreement of many operatives. Alibi, Kaid, Jackal, and more are concerned about Fenrir's recruitment to Rainbow. They are scared that Thermite is acting out of desperation and he's letting his guilt and anger cloud his judgment. But other ops such as Fuse, Blackbeard, Capcan, and Oryx see Fenrir for who he truly is. A sad outcast who at the end of the day just wants to help. We'd also get more information about the injuries of Sledge. He would have 2 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a few pieces of shrapnel lodged in his leg. As he says, Deimos should have used a bigger bomb. We also learn that Callie and Nighthaven are staying out of Rainbow's way. It's their mess, and she's got other business to attend to. Flores will also go visit Ash in her coma, saying, "Hey Capitana, when you wake up, I'll make you a whole buffet. Just come back to us." But whether the operators agree with it or not, Fenrir is now on Red Hammer. Although he understands the suspicion they have against him, he's ready to prove himself. Well, he would get the opportunity to do so when Red Hammer would be deployed to Costa Brava in Spain, where 8 hostages are being held in a building. The team would set up an FOB at the perimeter where they would begin to create their plan. Thermite, who is still recovering from his injuries, would assign Kaid as team leader for this mission. Fenrir would do some reconnaissance on the building, saying 4 hostiles, very capable. Our dialogue with them indicates they will kill hostages if necessary. No demands other than a boat out of here. Kaid tells Thermite that best case scenario is 2 hostages dead. Worst case scenario, all of them. The team would lose connection to Captain Thermite, with Amaru saying that something from inside the restaurant is creating interference with their comms. The captors radio into Red Hammer, thinking that they're just the police. "Hello, this is Svensson speaking," says Fenrir. "Bring the boat," says the hostage taker, as Fenrir begins to think of ways to delay them. "As I said earlier, these things take time." "No more time," they reply. "If the boat isn't here in 5 minutes, we kill our hostage." Red Hammer have to strike now, as Kaid begins to brief the team on what the plan is. This is when Fenrir intervenes, saying that they could use his dread mine and save every hostage. But Kaid does not like this idea, saying, "I know what your toxin does. It's chemical warfare." But Fenrir replies by saying, "This is a new iteration. It causes disorientation, confusion, and exposes hostages to a chemical agent." Kaid snaps back. "There are no lasting harmful side effects," says Fenrir. "I've tested it on myself to be sure." In a make or break decision, Kaid would allow Fenrir to do this. The team would begin to scale the building, as Fenrir and Kaid make their way round the side. Kaid drills a small hole into the building, and Fenrir deploys his modified formula. As the captors begin to make their way to the boat to make their escape, Fenrir activates his dread mine, causing mass confusion amongst the captors, as the rest of the squad repel in the building and take the hostiles down. Thanks to Fenrir's idea, there would be no hostage casualties. Paramedics would attend the scene to make sure the hostages are fine and have no lasting effects. Fenrir thanks Kaid for trusting him, but Kaid doesn't have anything to say and walks away. Fenrir, still trying to figure out what the demands of these captors were, would ask one of the hostages if they had any demands of them. That is when they get the revelation that one of these hostages worked for Yahata Data Services, specifically on the Rainbow account. He relays training information to agencies with potential operators. And a piece of information that they were able to extract from him was where the next training would happen. A code name, a place called Tower. During the same time this hostage situation was taking place, Vigil would be at the tower training location in South Korea, where he was supervising many Rainbow recruits, specifically in abseiling. Everything was as normal, until the sounds of a helicopter entered the scene. A barrage of bullets would hit the tower, causing many recruits to fall to their death, as Vigil is knocked unconscious by a large chunk of debris. 2 Rainbow recruits by the codenames of Ram and Angel attempt to escape the area. They're still attached via ropes and need to get out. A stray bullet would hit the rope of Angel, and she would tragically fall to her death, suffering the same fate as her fellow recruits. Ram would rappel inside the tower through a broken window, where she would use the boogie auto breacher to break through a wall into the armory and begin to return fire with an LMG. Ram was now the last stand against this helicopter. She would be able to hit the fuel line of this helicopter, causing it to lose control, hit the building, and crash to the floor below. As she walks through the rubble and bodies of her colleagues, she helps Vigil out of the rubble and brings him to his feet. The 2 Korean specialists are the only ones left standing, as they begin to make their way to the base of the tower. A bleeding Vigil now gets the intel from Red Hammer, who just completed their hostage operation, but it was too late. Deimos was one step ahead. He makes sure Ram is okay after she just lost her friend, and tells her to be ready for when they get to the base of the tower. As when they open the doors, they're immediately met with drones and gunfire. The carnage of the crashed helicopter now stands as the battleground between these 2 operators and Deimos' soldiers. Deimos' people were attempting to extract the helicopter's black box, as to prevent the sensitive information on it from falling in Rainbow's hands. The operators would quickly conceive of a plan. Ram would use the auto breacher as a distraction, whilst Vigil would cloak himself from the drone operative and flank the hostiles. They would put their ideas into action, with the auto breacher causing enough carnage for Vigil to slip around the sides. He would flank the drone operator and shoot them from behind, diverting the attention of the soldiers, as Ram would then open fire. The tactical execution and pinch by these 2 operatives would see an end to these soldiers. Rainbow would take control of the area, gathering as much evidence as they could. Not only would they extract the black box, but they would also take the ordnance used at the scene, and the uniforms that these soldiers were wearing had a name on it, an organization, called the Keres Legion. Rainbow would begin to analyze everything they have gathered. At the Viper Strike headquarters, 6 days after this attack, Mira and Rook can be seen testing the ordnance used during this assault, well, at least a replicated version using the forensic evidence of the scene. They learn that the ordnance the Keres Legion are using can even penetrate Rook's armor. Solis would be handed the black box from the helicopter, which holds all flight information and could point Rainbow into learning where it came from. Solis begins to analyze the data, saying that there is an additional level of encryption the Sunset R&D prototype isn't able to decipher. However, Solis would be able to determine from this data that the helicopter took off from a commercial freight ship called the Heartbreaker, which is currently moored off the coast of Portugal, with the recording making mention of a special operation. Following her bravery during the tower assault, Thermite would recruit Ram to Red Hammer, something that Kaid would be in approval of. A polar opposite of Thermite's recruitment of Fenrir. We would get some insight from both Rainbow and Nighthaven during this period of time as well. Nighthaven agent IQ would reach out to Vigil to send her condolences after the attack. Callie also let her agents know that they would only once again get involved in Rainbow's operation if the reward outweighs the risk. Smoke acknowledges that Ella is seemingly distraught after what happened to her older sister, almost dying in Deimos' attack. After years of always pushing Zofia away, the thought of almost losing her is clouding her mind. We'd even learn operators like Zofia and Mira see their dispute with Nighthaven as trivial, and that both sides could really benefit from cooperation once more. Zero would also make note of the pattern of these strikes, claiming that he feels like he's seen this work before, maybe believing something similar to what Harry believed, which Goya would also mention that he missed Harry. Frost would also suggest that the team lay their own trap, play Deimos at his own game, the same as you would do if you were hunting. With Ash still in her coma, Deimos still at large, and a larger conspiracy revealing itself, the intel would be relayed to Wolfguard, who is currently in Portugal with their newest recruit, Tubarão, an operative from the Portuguese Special Actions Detachment, the Tier 1 Special Force Maritime unit of the Portuguese Navy. Just like with Sense, the skills of Tubarão, but also his humanitarian outlook, and the buzz he would create with the frost grenades which he would develop himself, is what brought him on Doc's radar and subsequent recruitment to Wolfguard. The team would follow the intel of the Heartbreaker, with Tubarão and Thunderbird scoping out the vessel for any suspicious movement. A small boat would depart from the vessel and begin leading through a series of cave systems. Tubarão would pursue this lead, with Thunderbird following behind. The pair would then discover a facility hidden in this cave system. And it wasn't anything amateur. There was money here. There was funding. There were soldiers. This was the Keres Legion's base, Deimos' lair. Now, Tubarão would discover that the crew of the Heartbreaker had been taken hostage by the Keres Legion. He silently made his way into the base. With the lives of the hostage in danger, he had to be quick. Taking out Keres Legion soldiers, he would use his Zoto canister grenades, but he would be too late. Although they would uncover this base, the hostages were dead. The pair were able to discover intel, however, on Deimos' next operation. He was going to initiate an assault of the Emerald Plains Country Club in Northern Ireland. This club was secretly being used as a dark site by the Global Security Alliance Council. He wasn't just going for Rainbow, he was going for the entire chain of command. The pair would investigate further, where Tubarão would access the computers, learning that Deimos left hours ago, and he's already on his way. The pair attempt to relay the information to Captain Doc, but their signal won't escape the cave system. As more Keres soldiers return to the base, not knowing that they've been infiltrated, Tubarão and Thunderbird hide. Not being able to return up through the cave system, as they'd be noticed, Tubarão suggests that they steal the boat the soldiers arrived in and make their escape through that way. The two would get in position and begin to open fire on the soldiers. A gunfight would ensue, and Tubarão would make use of a nitro cell to blow these soldiers up. The pair would be flanked by a Keres specialist who would shoot Tubarão in the shoulder as Thunderbird lays down suppressive fire so Tubarão can get to cover. This specialist jumps Thunderbird, knocking the weapon from her hand. She charges him with a knife, stabbing him in the chest as Tubarão assists her. After being knocked back, the specialist propels himself off the wall and drags Tubarão into the water with them. Both soldiers are bleeding out from their injuries, and as the Keres specialist attempts to choke Tubarão, the operator grabs his Zoto canister, forcing it inside the open wound of this soldier and releasing it. This would result in an internal deep freeze in his system, causing his body to enter shock and die. Thunderbird would pull Tubarão out of the water and begin their escape. As they would pass the Heartbreaker, they'd be able to radio into Doc, who's currently at Hereford Base alongside Rook and Mira. Being in a close proximity to Northern Ireland, with Hereford being in England, the operators would immediately prepare for departure and make their way to Emerald Plains.
Clear! Start setting up. What's the meaning of this? Monsieur Secrétaire Général, we are with Rainbow. This location is compromised. Let's get you to the evac zone. And my security detail? It's too late for them now. Look sharp. Deimos is here. Mira, finish up and fall back. We lure him in and take him alive. Hold. Now.
Tree still standing.
Light down, cabrone!
Mira.
Disappointing. Rainbow operators were harder to kill. In my day. Samuel Fish. Say hi to Hereford.
Ta gueule, connard.
What are you waiting for? Pull the goddamn trigger, soldiers.
Not gonna happen. It's over, Deimos. And you will tell us everything.
Nothing I say will save Rainbow. You're already dead.
We'll see about that.
Deimos would be captured and taken into their custody following his attack on Emerald Plains. Doc, Mira, and Rook would survive the ordeal after upgrading their armor thanks to the testing and evaluation of the Keres Legion ordnance. Deimos knew that his ordnance could penetrate Rook's armor, but what he didn't expect was that Rainbow would get one step ahead of this and play him at his own game. They laid their trap with Sam Fisher, and it would result in a success. Ash would also awaken from her coma, beginning her healing process and getting brought up to speed on what has happened. But now that they have Deimos, Rainbow would make their bombshell discovery. The man behind the pain, behind the mask, behind the suffering, is none other than one of Rainbow's very best, the once presumed dead Gerald Morris. Although Rainbow would now have Gerald in their custody, and the threat of the Keres Legion still at large, there would be another group that would linger over Rainbow, begin to pressure them, and that is the Global Security Alliance Council. After one of their very own was targeted at Emerald Plains, the GSAC members are now more on edge and beginning to question Rainbow's effectiveness. There would be even more infighting in the team after the decision to leave Deimos alive. Ops such as Thermite, Kapkan, and Azami thinks they should have killed him, whereas Jaeger, Doc, Lion agree that it's better keeping him alive. The operators aren't the only one with this conflict as well. Deimos himself thinks they should have put him down and sees them as weak for not doing so. The team would welcome back Ash as another operative, Thermite, would begin to spiral in a sense. His mental health was beginning to decline. He blames himself for what happened to Aruni all those years ago. He blames himself about what happened to Ash during that operation. People are already on his back for his recruitment of Fenrir, and now that Deimos is still breathing and he can't change that, it's eating away at him. Osa says to Callie that they haven't heard from Rainbow since the Soul attack, and that maybe it's time for them to reach out for once. Meanwhile, Mira would head back to the lab, where she would request Blackbeard to supply her with his rifle shields for assessment. Now, as the team would adapt to this new climate and bring themselves back on their feet, there's something that's still looming over them. What Deimos said, that Rainbow's already dead. A hypothetical doomsday clock has been initiated. What does Gerald mean? Deimos would be escorted to Hereford base, where he'd be held under Rainbow's supervision, with Ash, Doc, and Buck beginning an interrogation. Doc says if they don't get information out of him soon, the council will relocate him and they'll lose their leverage. Ash, who is still recovering from her injuries, would enter the interrogation room with Gerald. A reflection on the window of their younger selves gives us a hint that these two have a history. Ash presents Gerald with a picture of Harry, Yahata, and Angel, just a few of the victims that have died at his hands. Let's see, Ash says. Estranged family, parents deceased, godfather on his deathbed, not to mention your career prospects. I can't imagine you thought you'd get away with this. So, why? What did you get out of it? Good old revenge not enough, says Morris. I know you're not that simple, replies Ash. I've read every piece there is to read, written by you or about you. That is when Morris replies by telling her to read her file. She would try and begin to understand what he meant by this. The group would pull up Ash's Rainbow file, where they would acknowledge that it was originally created by Gerald himself, years before his defection. Ash was already being recommended to Rainbow before its first deactivation. Buck just sees this as him trying to buy himself some time, but Ash is gonna attempt to do some more digging. She bursts into the interrogation room, instantly stating her point. The last time I saw you, you were giving a talk on explosives. It was my first year with the Bureau. Ironic, isn't it? He replied, joking about the fact that she was blown up by his very own explosives. You were always a leader, Ash says, an exemplar. I almost didn't believe you were Deimos. You haven't changed though, have you? So try me, Ash says as she pulls out a picture of Daniel Bogart's family. Starting with Bogart, tell me why he had to die. Convince me that that was the right thing to do. He got in the way, replied Gerald. There's no grand scheme there. You don't feel responsible, Ash says. Responsible? I was the only one being responsible that day. How? Ash replies. You had orders. Fuck the orders, shouts Gerald. It wasn't the first time Rainbow let politicians get in the way, and it sure wasn't the last. Don't tell me you never wished you could burn it all down. I made my choice. Rainbow was holding us all back. What did you do, Morris? Replies Ash. How did it go from that to this? But Gerald's finished talking, and they return him to his cell. Buck points out that it seems what Ash said struck a nerve, and Ash claims that he's still resisting. It feels like he's angry that she's not meeting him where he's at. Ash would sleep on this conversation and keep repeating what Gerald was saying in her head. Without Buck and Doc around, she would make her way to Gerald's cell. A man can't have a little peace at night now, he says. I thought you'd just be happy to see me, says Ash. Just me. No man behind the mirror. I think I understand. Not that I would have gone this far. Gerald then perks up and listens to what Ash is about to say. When Harry became 6, I had my doubts. I questioned him, opposed his decisions. He wasn't one of us. Never had to be the one pulling the trigger. Go on, says Deimos. Part of me accepted that things change, and this was one of them. But deep down, I thought, couldn't we do better? And then he stepped down, showed us that we could redefine what Rainbow is. We would have, if not for you. Rainbow doesn't need to die, Morris. It just needs to change. How about a compromise? I'm listening, he says. This is obviously bigger than you. Give me something to work with. Show the others that we need you. You could turn this around. Doc and Buck get wind that Ash is interrogating Deimos against protocol. They rush to the cell block to stop her. Here's my offer, replies Gerald. You take me into the field, and I'll give you what you need. Oh, and I'll need my vendetta. Now, this was a big ask by Deimos. They can't trust him with a loaded weapon, let alone behind a cell. Ash understands there's more at play here. Her and Gerald have the same outcome. They want Rainbow to change, but they went completely different routes about doing it. Gerald took an extremist, terrorist route, which has clouded his judgment and mind. Where Ash challenged the hierarchy, she challenged Harry. Even when Nighthaven joined, she challenged this decision. And Harry became that force for change when he introduced the squads. His program was to change Rainbow, and Deimos killed him. Although they are in agreement that Rainbow needed change, they couldn't be further apart. Now, Gerald's demands were high. Rainbow would make compromises. Not the freedom or the means for him to gain that freedom, but enough for them to squeeze some intel out of him. Whilst Gerald was being held at Hereford, there would be some changes at the base too. All Rainbow recruit training would now take place here in response to the attack at the tower. For the safety of the recruits, Rainbow operatives, and staff, this would now be all centralized at Hereford base. Many Rainbow operatives would now also be assigned protection detail for GSAC members. Ayana and Amaru would be sent to Peru, with other squads such as Mozzie and Ram being deployed globally. This was all hands on deck. Every operator had a role. Now, with the recruit training centralized in Hereford, there would be some changes to its system as well. Mira would learn that the recruit playbook, the same one that she went through and other Rainbow operatives are training under, was written by Gerald himself. An indication as to why his soldiers are so skilled. They were getting Rainbow level training. Mira would ask Thorn to create a new Rainbow recruit training system from scratch. Although this isn't anything out of the ordinary for Thorn, she already has a reputation in her training systems. This would be a big ask, but this would be Thorn's opportunity for her biggest contribution to Rainbow ever since she joined. Solace jokingly says to her that that's like attempting to repaint the Mona Lisa. But Thorn would take this task fully under her wing and deliver. She would create an entirely new training system, also introducing new aliases for the recruits depending on what they're being trained for. Recruits being trained to be attacking specialists will now be known as strikers, with their defensive counterparts known as sentries. With a new redesigned uniform giving them all the utility they need to learn their roles, with of course training overlapping between them as well, it doesn't mean they're just going to be exclusively for those roles. A new era of Rainbow's recruit training was born. Many Rainbow Ops would also come forward and assist in the recruit training, such as Monty, who was a range instructor for the GIGN, a fitting role for him to do with the recruits. There was still a lot of infighting between operators at this time, however. Many of them were disagreeing with not only Deimos being alive, but the compromises that the team were making with him for the intel he was providing. Something which is once again a testament to Harry's leadership. They are somewhat falling apart without him. It's not that the squad leaders are incompetent, they are the best in their game, but they still need that glue to hold them together and realign them. Even Flores, who is undoubtedly loyal to Ash, is questioning her judgment on Deimos. Nighthaven agent Aruni would also reach out to her old friend Thermite, after hearing how much he's been struggling since the Deimos situation unfolded. Now, with the reorganization of Rainbow taking place at Hereford, Deimos would provide them with a piece of intel. A Keres Legion cell is currently camped out within a chalet in the French Alps. Ghost Eye's operatives Kavera, Maverick, and Zofia enter the scene, with 15 hostiles being counted so far. On top of Keres Legion soldiers, there's also an unidentified man talking about a safe house and coordinates. Captain Kavera relays this information to Zero, who's overseeing recruit training at Hereford. Not only is he shocked that Deimos' information was accurate, he asks them if they need reinforcements. Kavera replies by saying, "No time. There's target with critical intel. We have to make our move before they do." Zero acknowledges this, and Kavera initiates a tactical plan to draw this man out and interrogate him. Maverick, perched on a nearby cliff, will hold down the perimeter, with Kavera saying that the helipad and Western Road are the only viable evac points. Kavera will get into position as Zofia breaches the library side of the chalet, firing at the Keres soldiers and causing this man to flee. The team utilize their advantage of the unknown to trick these Keres soldiers into believing there are more operators at play. Kavera enters the building pursuing this man as Zofia is perched above the fireplace, deploying concussions and raining down hell on these soldiers. Cav pursues this man to the basement of the building, where he jumps on a snowmobile and begins his getaway. As he attempts to escape the chalet, a sniper shot by Maverick immobilizes the vehicle, throwing the man to the ground and killing the driver. Zofia provides cover for Kavera as there are still 9 Keres soldiers standing, giving her enough time to interrogate this man. The details are spared, but we can only assume that Kavera's interrogation probably wasn't very clean. She relays the information to Zero that they have what they need. The Keres Legion safe house is in Greece. Whatever they're planning, their intel will be there. Sam acknowledges this, saying, "We have a contact there. Maybe it's time for her to get involved." Who is this contact? Well, it was none other than the ex-operative and squadmate of Gerald, Kure Galanos. Following the incident that took place, plus the subsequent shift in her career, studying mechanical engineering and undergoing BDR training to operate ordnance defusal drones, Kure would create her first ever iteration of the shells, which are advanced robots used to defuse bombs. Now, this would be just a first iteration, all coming from manual inputs provided by Kure, and would even be deployed by the Greek ECAM in Operation Daedalus. Well, the early iterations of the shells were good, but it's only when Kure would attend a defense hardware summit where she would meet Osa from Nighthaven. The two would begin to strike up a conversation, and using Osa's skills in robotics and Kure's knowledge and vision of what the shells can be, they would create the V10 Pantheon shells, the most advanced version yet. Still requiring a manual input by Kure, this version of the shells are the most streamlined, fluid, humanoid version so far. And now that Kure is being called upon by Rainbow once again, the GSAC and Aurelia, who although is no longer 6, is still involved with the GSAC, give Kure a special role. Under the call sign now of Scopos, she is to enact a full evaluation of Rainbow and report everything back to the GSAC to assess the team's effectiveness. The GSAC already have a rocky standing with Rainbow right now, and although their initial recommendation was for her to stick to lab work and engineering, she would be given the full endorsement to return to active duty, operating Talos and Colossus, the Pantheon shells, from her control center. She would be assigned to Wolfguard under Captain Doc. Not only is Kure now back as a Rainbow operative serving on the field with Talos and Colossus, she is also now fully assessing the team, setting up groups and interviewing operators. But Kure also has a good standing with Nighthaven, well, at least with Osa. Kure would be reintegrated as Rainbow would gather intel on their Greece operation. Scopos would meet with the operatives and begin to assess them as people, operators, and as a unit. Using Rainbow intelligence as well as the information gathered from the chalet, Dokubi would be deployed to Greece to join Kure, where they would initiate their attack on the Keres Legion safe house. As Dokubi would slip in and access their servers, Kure would provide cover using Talos and Colossus, operating from a van not too far from the safe house. The advanced Pantheon shells offer cover and support fighting back against these Keres Legion soldiers. as Dokkaebi continues to download all the information from the infiltrated database. Thanks to Skopos' aid, this mission would be a success, and the pair would attempt to extract the intel they have gathered. As they begin their getaway, Skopos would look at Dokkaebi's tablet, assessing the information found on the Keres Legion servers. There's a huge amount of data to go through: schematics, travel logs, locations such as an embassy in Poland, Hereford Base, the Heartbreaker, even mention of Detroit. Information about Rainbow's past and present is all on these files. Even mention of previous operations such as the Las Vegas Convention Center, which took place in 2010. Everything was on this. The two would begin to make their escape from the area, where they would travel back to Hereford Base and relay the intel. That is when remaining Keres Legion soldiers would track down their van and start pursuing them. Skopos would begin to pilot Talos and Colossus, fighting back against these soldiers, using impact grenades to blow up the vehicles. As Dokkaebi, whilst driving, attempts to access even more of this information to get the intel on an imminent attack. Skopos' shells would begin to sustain critical damage, and she'd start to take things into her own hands, opening the van doors and shooting back at these soldiers. As the final piece of this convoy is dealt with, Dokkaebi claims that there is a target, but it's encrypted. All she can access is a day, 2 days from now. With heaps of intel in this extracted data, and only a day, Kure only sees one way they can narrow down their search. The two would prepare to travel to Hereford Base. On the flight, Skopos would write the following memo. I read the Deimos interrogation briefs on the flight to Hereford. Gustav asked him if he expected me to ignore protocol in 2012 and run into that building. Stay behind. He refused to answer. How am I supposed to look at Bogart's boys in the eyes now that I know how he died? What about Gerald's daughters now that I know he's alive? I can't let him stay in my head. GSAC is breathing down Rainbow's neck, and if I can't get the team straightened out in time, cutting it so close in Emerald Plains has left us hanging from a very fragile rope. I will not let Rainbow choke. The fight's not done. The pair arrive at Hereford Base, where they are greeted by Blackbeard, who is currently overseeing Deimos. Skopos requests the two operatives to leave her alone with Gerald. She's still processing the fact that her friend and colleague she once thought was dead could do such a thing and commit the atrocities he has. Blackbeard tells Skopos that he has to return the last of his rifle shields to Mira, as she has an upgrade in mind. And although she is now alone with Gerald, Blackbeard reminds him that if he tries to do anything, there's someone in the shadows watching him. As I live and breathe, says Deimos, Kure Galanos. Good of you to make time for me. I hope you're enjoying the fresh air, she says. You might not get a lot of it after today. I've been compliant so far, haven't I? Says Gerald. Cut the bullshit, Morris, Skopos interrupts. You set us up. Sorry, he replies. They don't keep me informed. How did Rainbow fail today? You knew your information would lead Rainbow to Greece, to your list of targets. Tell me, which one's next? Why would I do that? Says Deimos. You've been stalling, replies Skopos, giving us what you could afford to lose. This is your last chance to cooperate. Or what? Replies Deimos. Or no more quid pro quo. You rot in a hole and lose any chance of cutting a deal with GSAC. The list. Is that the only thing you found? Says Gerald. We also found a date, she replies. Tomorrow. And I'm betting you know what that target will be. And who got your intel? He says. That girl from the Korean Special Forces? Dokkaebi? I'll have to keep my eye on that one. Rainbow's out of time. Why'd you come back, Kure? Because of you, she replies. I'm going to fix this. For Bogart's family. For yours. They mourned you. And for the Gerald I believed in. Because you'll never be half the man he was. You're going to lose, Deimos. We'll find out tomorrow, won't we? Replies Deimos. Now Rainbow begins to prepare for an imminent attack. There is so much information on their list, and they begin to send operatives to many of these locations to prepare. Brava and Habana are sent to Singapore, whilst operatives are still protecting GSAC members as well. The team is now spread thin, attempting to tackle this imminent attack wherever it may appear. Meanwhile, at the GSAC, one of their board members, Lucas Liu, would say the following. Upon reading Dedicated Officer Galanos' most recent report, it has become abundantly clear that she lacks the objectivity required to properly assess Rainbow as an organization. She is too close to this unit, too willing to give them the benefit of the doubt when she should be cracking down. Rainbow was resurrected to work as a deterrent to worldwide safety threats, a job that they have repeatedly failed to do. Instead, they have become a lightning rod for those very issues. I, for one, won't sit idly by while civilians are endangered and council members are targeted. I propose we discard all prior assessments and begin a full reevaluation immediately. As members of GSAC, we owe it to ourselves to elect a neutral party capable of accurately assessing Rainbow to see if they have lived up to the standards we set for them when the program was initiated. There is now internal fighting within the GSAC, mass disagreement on how Rainbow should be handled and assessed, all whilst the doomsday clock is still ticking above everyone's head. With the team spread thin, Rainbow's recruit training continues as scheduled at Hereford. Maverick, who's on base with Frost, asked her if her comms are also messing up. He's been having issues with them all day, and it's causing problems. Mira would also give Blackbeard a gadget upgrade, replacing his rifle shields with the hull adaptable shield. From her run-in with Deimos, she knows that Rainbow needs to be one step ahead at every time, and she's starting to look into improving the team's gadgets. Blackbeard, who is still on base, would aid Thorn in training a sentry, putting them through the program that Thorn designed. Blackbeard and this sentry would face off, with Blackbeard taking them down. That is when, instead of getting up, the sentry reaches for a weapon, which Thorn notices and the pair take cover. The two operators work together, advancing on the sentry and disarming him. After giving them a chance to explain themselves, they reach for the weapon once more, and Thorn kills them. The alarms of Hereford base erupt as gunfire ensues. This was the Keres Legion's attack, emanating from the inside of Rainbow through the recruits. Many strikers and sentries would execute their fellow recruits, unmasking themselves and coming together. The base was now on full lockdown, with the runways closed and off-site operators unable to make contact. Zero would take command of this mission, informing all the operators on base as to what is happening and initiating a plan. The Keres Legion's goal is to free Deimos, and they cannot let this happen. The Keres soldiers are following the command of a man by the alias of Phobos, and now the biggest attack on Rainbow is underway. Sam orders the team to hold down an area at the south of the base, whilst Maverick, Lion, and Mira create an entry point from the inside to allow the team to enter and help protect the server room. This is a critical all-hands-on mission. All operators push back against the might of the Keres Legion, even Fenrir, who is finally getting his revenge on Deimos. Whilst this is happening, Blackbeard is present at another side of the base. He comes across a striker recruit and a man pinned down by Keres soldiers. He takes down Deimos' men and asks this recruit for their call sign, which they say is Striker Z09, and they're from New Zealand. They are currently escorting the dedicated GSAC officer which has been sent in, Karon. Blackbeard, now realizing they have a civilian on base, takes charge and begins to carve a path forward. At this time, Maverick would also be able to breach the entry point and allow the operators into the base. They would begin to hold down the data room inside of Hereford to prevent the information from being stolen. Multiple operatives would also arrive at the base, providing reinforcement for their team. Blackbeard and Striker Z09 continue to escort Karon off the base, where they come across Sense being pinned down. He coordinates a plan with the Striker. Blackbeard will push in with his shield as Sense fires, and the Striker flanks the Keres soldiers. The lone operative thanks the pair for the assist, and informs them that they have orders to prep Deimos for air evac. Blackbeard tells the Striker to go with Sense and aid them in evacuating Deimos, as he will take Karon and get him off the base. Blackbeard tells Karon to keep his head down and listen to him. The two make their way to one of the outer bunkers of the base, almost making their escape when they're met by Keres soldiers. A startled Karon disobeys Blackbeard's orders and attempts to flee. Blackbeard would deal with these soldiers, but for Karon, it was too late. He would be shot in the chest and begin bleeding out. Blackbeard isn't giving up though. He carries Karon by one arm, while simultaneously fighting Keres soldiers. The team inside the base successfully hold down the server room, and with Deimos prepared for evac, that is now their priority. Sam informs Rainbow that the base is rigged to blow, and it's too late to stop it. This is a full evacuation, everyone must leave the base. The operators now exit the building, escorting Deimos, making their way to the helicopter. Blackbeard gets Karon out of the hot zone, but it's too late for him. He's dying. This is where Karon informs Blackbeard that the GSAC are going to vote on shutting Rainbow down. They were waiting for his report. Karon would draw his final breath as Rainbow get Deimos into the helicopter and the team make their escape. The clock strikes 0 and Hereford base fully erupts. Rainbow are now at their lowest point. Deimos had won once again. Hereford base was gone, and the entire existence of the team was now in jeopardy. Rainbow are now in a period of recovery. The assault on Hereford base would see the death of many recruits, signal officers, and other Rainbow staff. Operators like Lion were near death, and if it wasn't for Doc finding him, he would have been gone. Not only this, Dokkaebi would be captured by the Keres Legion, for reasons unknown by the team. The vote by the Global Security Alliance Council is still looming over Rainbow's head, and following the destruction of Hereford and the death of their dedicated officer, things are not looking too promising for Rainbow. If they were to save Dokkaebi and fight back, they needed help, and they needed resources. In their time of need, Rainbow and the GSAC would offer a contract to Nighthaven for the two sides to work together once again. This was the opportunity Callie was waiting for. Nighthaven were already struggling since being grounded by Rainbow. That action took a hit on Nighthaven's reputation, and this is their opportunity to bring it back. She would be met with criticism from many of her agents for this move, but she reminds them who's in charge and that they follow her lead. Nighthaven needs this contract, and you damn well know they're gonna do it right. The cleanup of Hereford base is underway, as the newly reunited Rainbow and Nighthaven would begin their pursuit of the Keres Legion and Dokkaebi. During a reconnaissance mission, Red Hammer Operative Sledge and Nighthaven Agent Smoke would track down a Keres Legion convoy that are moving ordnance. The crates would have a name of a company listed on it, known as Polaris. The two specialists would engage with the Keres Legion soldiers, and after being hit by a grenade, Smoke would be injured. Sledge would cover him as the pair are saved by Nook, who is now back in the field and ready to fight the Keres Legion. The team would follow the intel of Polaris, with the company's HQ being located in Detroit, and a woman with a link to the company we don't yet know is being targeted by Keres Legion soldiers in Poland. It is here where Nighthaven agent Ella and Ghost Eye's operative Zofia intercept the Keres Legion and extract this woman. We also see a reunion of the sisters, fighting together once more, and Ella gives her a smile which speaks 1,000 words. Now as Rainbow and Nighthaven are gathering their intel, and Hereford is still being searched, Habano would promote a surviving Rainbow Striker recruit to Viper Strike. Striker Z09, who displayed courage, leadership, and bravery during the assault of Hereford base, is given the call sign of Raura and joins the hunt for the Keres Legion. She recalls one of her friends and fellow recruits called Linnea turning on them and killing their squad, with Raura having to kill her. A glimpse into how deeply rooted these Keres Legion soldiers were in the recruit system. She even invited Raura to her wedding. And it was all a lie and an illusion to infiltrate Rainbow. So Polaris would be Rainbow and Nighthaven's biggest lead here, and they would deploy Solus and Raura to infiltrate the HQ in Detroit. It is here where the pair would discover this building swarming with Keres Legion soldiers, seemingly scrubbing the database, or stealing it. They're not sure. Before they engage, the pair agree that they should leave one of these soldiers alive for questioning. And they do just that. They enter in the room and engage in a gunfight, as the Keres Legion continue to extract information from this database. As this soldier with the data begins to flee, the pair catch up with him, cornering him, and begin their questioning. Before this soldier can say anything, he is executed by a sniper shot from outside the window, by Phobos. Raura deploys her dumb panel for cover, as Solus grabs the data, and the two operators flee. Phobos detonates explosives which are laced throughout this building, causing it to completely collapse, and creating unrest in downtown Detroit. Solus and Raura are able to escape, and the pair return back to Rainbow and Nighthaven, as Solus begins to decrypt and analyze the data. Now, this wouldn't take her very long to do, and what she would find were multiple pieces of intel pointing to an abandoned district on the outskirts of Detroit itself. Following every lead they can, Rainbow and Nighthaven deploy Grim, Valkyrie, and Raura to scope out this area. Dubbed as the Zeta team, Valkyrie takes command, and the trio scope out the area, waiting for any suspicious activity. And the intel would be correct, with soldiers patrolling the area. If the Keres Legion is here, then it's likely so is Phobos. The trio would silently make their way into this building, with Raura covering their back. Grim would also remove any silent security device as well, so the team would go unnoticed. Well, this would be short-lived, as a Keres Legion soldier would spot them, and their cover is now blown. Valkyrie orders Grim to deploy his mechanical bees, which disorientate these enemies and take them by surprise. The operators and agent work in unison, taking out these soldiers and progressing their way through this building. As they pursue the fleeing soldier who is making their way to Phobos, Grim says that he should split off from the two of them to allow him to flank around. She reminds him that if he does this, there'll be no one to cover his back. And he replies by saying, "The mission comes first, right?" At the end of the day, he's a mercenary, a very skilled one. If you give him a job, he's going to complete it. Valkyrie and Raura proceed on the route. As they begin to chase this man down further, Grim appears from a side entrance and takes down the Keres soldier. This is a testament to Rainbow and Nighthaven's teamwork, and why it's important that the two sides work together. As they enter the room this soldier was heading for, they find an empty control panel, with Phobos nowhere to be seen. However, there is something of value here. Dokkaebi is being held in this district. With this being a closed circuit, the team are able to get the coordinates, and this would initiate Rainbow and Nighthaven's biggest joint operation ever. They need to stop the Keres Legion now. Rainbow would completely cut off this district from the rest of Detroit. Wolfguard's priority here was making sure no civilians would bleed into this area, keeping them back and administering aid if necessary. Rainbow and Nighthaven would set up a Detroit forward operating base, where the operators and agents are called in and briefed on their mission. Some operatives, such as Sense, wouldn't be present here, as they would be overlooking Deimos in an undisclosed location where he has now been moved to. The team are already on thin ice with the GSAC. They cannot let this go wrong. Now, during this time of Rainbow and Nighthaven's reintegration, OSA would develop an upgrade for Clash's existing shield, developing the CCE Mark II, allowing a more streamlined and efficient usage of her shield on the field. And this would be deployed during this operation. We'd also learn from Sledge and Thatcher that OSA was tinkering with Thatcher's EMPs a little bit as well, which Thatcher wasn't necessarily happy with, but Scopos tells Thatcher to trust her, and if she needs them, give them to her. This abandoned district in Detroit would now become the battleground between Rainbow and Nighthaven versus the Keres Legion. A new signal officer would be assigned to this mission after many of them died during the assault of Hereford Base. Olivia Anderson, known as Epsilon, would relay all information to the team present during this operation. She is the only surviving signal officer alongside Auspice, who did survive the Keres Legion's attack. As well as this, Ayana would use her connections to redirect a satellite to provide an advanced UAV of the area. This way, all the specialists have real-time intel of where each of them are on the field and increase the efficiency and success rate of this mission. We see Ash and Callie talking after not interacting for a very long time. Ash doesn't seem fully on board with working with Nighthaven once again, and Callie says that she's glad Ash is safe and came back from her coma okay, but to not step on her feet and stay out of her way. Multiple teams spread across this entire district, searching everything with a fine-tooth comb. During their search for Dokkaebi, we would get an insight into her interrogations by Phobos. Now, Phobos would begin to play mental games with Dokkaebi, continuously talking to an unknown person on the other side of a call. She would be captured prior to Hereford being destroyed. She doesn't know if that mission was a success, or if Deimos escaped, or anything. And she's wondering why the Keres Legion want her specifically. Her first theory was that Phobos failed in his plan. They didn't extract Deimos. If they did, Dokkaebi wouldn't be alive. He needs her to save him. Phobos begins to question Dokkaebi, how she was able to hack the Keres Legion and the information she got from it. He seems quite concerned that there's someone else who can interpret the data, saying that Rainbow would have redundancies, but Dokkaebi reassures him that it's only her. She's acting strong and resilient against Phobos' interrogations, and he's not going to break her that easily. He tells her that the next time they speak, they'll have a choice. She either talks or dies. That's her choice. Later, in her cell, she would make note of a broken piece of bar, as well as thinking to herself, he must be protecting something critical, something that Rainbow can reach with her hack. Phobos then continues his mind games by saying, "Your friends were following up on that list. You won't be seeing them again." "Let me guess," she replies. "You blew them up. Careful now. Deimos might want you alive, but I'm in control here. Those calls you're taking, they're not from Deimos. He wouldn't rely on a cheap knockoff to interrogate me. You failed to extract him, didn't you?" This enrages Phobos as he pulls his weapon and shoots Dokkaebi, grazing her cheek and hitting the wall. Phobos is then informed that Rainbow is here and they're out of time. Phobos claims that he needs to secure the prototype and orders this Keres soldier to kill her. As Phobos quickly leaves, this Keres soldier goes to execute Dokkaebi until she slashes him in the throat with the broken piece of her cell's bar. She steals the weapon from the soldier and begins to make her getaway. That is then when she comes across the schematics of something known as the prototype. This is the explosive that was used to destroy Hereford Base, and this explosive is currently being mass produced by advanced 3D printers in this district. Meanwhile, Rainbow are continuing their operations on the ground. Clash and IQ are pushing their way through this district fighting these soldiers, as Phobos is making his escape. The pair, alongside other operatives, spend hours searching for Dokkaebi, and when it seems like they're about to be flanked by a Keres soldier, a disgruntled, tired, broken Dokkaebi hits this soldier with a pipe and is secured by the team. Clash and IQ relay this information to Epsilon, who calls in Thunderbird and Jaeger to provide an aerial extraction. As Thunderbird begins to lower the helicopter down, Jaeger fights back against the Keres soldiers with an LMG. Clash also makes use of her upgraded shield. The trio make their way to the evac point, and they successfully save Dokkaebi. Meanwhile, we would get some insight of the cleanup operation in Hereford, where operators such as Kapkan and Rook are working to still clear the rubble, and Rook even says that they can identify the dead Keres infiltrators. They don't even know if the recruits were who they thought they were. Rook was here until Habana calls him into Detroit as well, saying that he'll do more good as an operator than a first responder. Dokkaebi would be taken to the medbay, where she would begin to be treated for her injuries, but she would relay all the information she found, especially that of the prototype. Although Dokkaebi was rescued, Rainbow and Nighthaven now had a new objective: to seize the production of the prototype and destroy any existing ones created. Callie, who again is trying to make sure that Nighthaven is on top form for this mission, decides that it's time to bring in her ringer, her hidden enforcer, Denari. This operation would begin to escalate more. Wolfguard would have to attend to wounded civilians on the street, and more operators are called in to assist. We would continue to get more insights into our operators as well. Jaeger and Ayana seem to have grown a bond together and enjoy each other's presence, and something that's quite concerning is it seems that Finka's condition is getting worse. Well, Rainbow would begin their investigation of the prototype, and using the schematics she had stolen, Dokkaebi would begin to create a hack to seize any further production. The only issue here is that this would have to be deployed manually to the central server room, which is operating these printers. Still in recovery, but able to complete this hack, she would pass this over to Maestro, as well as Nighthaven's Denari, who Callie had to pull out of an active mission to bring him here. He's briefed on the mission at hand, and he's ready to go. He knows what he has to do: stop Phobos, and he believes he's the man to do it. Rainbow and Nighthaven would create a distraction, allowing Maestro and Denari to silently slip into the server room. As Maestro begins the hack, Keres soldiers enter the server room, where Denari, using his trip connectors, provides cover for Maestro and takes out these terrorists. They will be able to push the Keres Legion back with enough time for Maestro to initiate the hack and seize all production of the prototype. But as one objective is complete, another arises. The pair discover a bomb chart, which shows that the Keres Legion have planted explosives all around the city of Detroit. This is no longer a self-contained mission to this district, this is now fully bled into civilian areas. Not only this, it shows the intention of targeting major cities around the globe. Although the production of the prototype is halted, there are still active explosives at large, and Phobos is intending to ship more globally. This information is relayed to Epsilon, and all the operators and agents are called back to the forward operating base. Red Hammer, Viper Strike, Wolfguard, Ghost Eyes, and Nighthaven are all briefed on this next mission by their captains. They are working in unison like never before. The 5 squads have never been stronger, and they all get to work. Azami and Grim would be assigned to cover the northwest quadrant, with Doc adding Ying to this squad to make sure no civilians get hurt. This is just a glimpse into the ever-growing operation Rainbow and Nighthaven were partaking in. We'd learned from Maverick that Nook would spend an hour alone with Zero and Kivera and then go off on her own again, not interacting with any other operatives. Nook has also been given special clearance to deal with the Keres Legion how she pleases, separate from the rest of the team. Tachanka would reconnect with his old friend Finka. The two of them used to date years prior before Rainbow, but he notices something off about her, and it seems to be related to her condition. Are things getting worse for Finka? Scopus would compare the events that are unraveling in Detroit to that of the operation that took place in Vegas, even mentioning Gabriel Novak by name and how they cannot let that happen again. Denari talks to Grim, who he's known for a very long time, and he believes that Callie is trying to make Nighthaven look as good as possible because she's looking to sell. Legion would gear up in bomb disposal gear, something he would do during his time in the police. Anytime these operators find an explosive, they call it into Epsilon and Legion will go disable it. Callie also assigns Denari to the downtown location himself, as the rest of the team are spread elsewhere. At this time, OSA would also develop a new upgrade for Thatcher, the EGS Disruptor. Put together using what she had on hand at the forward operating base and some old prototypes, the Disruptor should help keep Thatcher ahead in the field. With the briefing now over, it's time to go. Rainbow and Nighthaven would flood the city of Detroit. Tubarão and Ramai would deal with an explosive at the Windsor Tunnel. The two diving experts would utilize their skills in tackling this explosive. Due to it being a hot zone, the city's hospital would have to be evacuated. Wolfguard would set up a temporary hospital in a safe location, where Doc would begin to take charge, as Thunderbird would help administer aid and resources, and Ace would partake in search and rescue, as well as providing military aid. Although he may have not lived to see it, this was the Rainbow and Nighthaven that Harry had always visioned. Warden would also be assigned protection detail for the mayor of Detroit, escorting him to a local county and making sure he is safe. President Baldwin will then call Warden to the Oval Office. It's going to be a lot for him to cover up Rainbow's involvement in this, especially considering that primaries are starting soon, and this is definitely going to have an effect. Whilst the operators and agents are all in these missions, Callie and Ash would have a meeting with dedicated GSAC officer Aya Smith. It is here where she would relay the info that the GSAC had a majority vote, and that the Rainbow program is terminated. They have exactly 1 hour to ramp down and cease operations. Ash immediately fights back at this decision. You have operators currently on the ground dealing with explosives and protecting civilians. We cut to Denari, who is in downtown Detroit dealing with one of these explosives. Aya continues her statement to Ash and Callie. Any specialists still on the field are to stand down and make their final reports. And their objectives, says Callie? They are to be handled by local authorities, replies Smith. You've done enough. We return to Denari, who is fighting Keres soldiers on the train whilst working with Epsilon to locate the explosive. Meanwhile, Maestro's team would be able to intercept the Keres Legion, who had taken a man linked to the New Horizons shipping company hostage. Ash would continue to bargain with Smith, saying that they're so close to getting Phobos. If they can just give them 24 hours, it will be done. But Smith says the GSAC won't let anything fall through the cracks. Just because they're deactivating Rainbow doesn't mean they're going to let the Keres Legion get away. Callie adds on by saying, this isn't what Nighthaven agreed to. Nighthaven's contract will end early, says Smith. Paid in full. Don't worry, GSAC will be in touch. Denari finally reaches this explosive, but when he opens the hatch, he finds only one. There are now multiple explosives unaccounted for, plus intel suggesting that the Keres Legion are going to ship these worldwide, and the VIP related to the shipping company being taken hostage. Epsilon relays all of this information, and Denari rushes to the Nighthaven base. Look, says Smith, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. It's not what I wanted to hear either. The prototype was destroyed. They can't make any more explosives. The only way I can buy you more time is if you give me proof that Phobos has something else cooking. Ash looks at Callie and she admits defeat. But that is when Denari bursts through the door and gives them the intel the team needs. Epsilon claims it's the same all over Detroit. There is minimal resistance, and that Phobos has more explosives to throw around. He chose civilian targets, not strategic ones. He'd done this to buy himself time. He's not finished, says Denari. So there's more of these in play, replies Smith. Tell me you know exactly where Phobos is going. What happens if you don't stop him? And what are you going to do about it? Denari says, between Dokubi's hack and the map in the Keres safe room, the only options we have left is the port of Detroit. Callie adds on by saying, so we go. We seize the explosives and we stop Phobos. GSAC will still get what it wants, but the job will be done. And Ash closes by saying, if we don't stop him, these explosives go global. Thousands could die, and Rainbow wouldn't be there to stop it. Sounds like actionable intel to me, says Smith. I'll get you those 24 hours. Cohen, what's the plan? 2 teams, Ash replies. Alpha will be responsible for the explosives. Delta will go after Phobos. You have specialists you need on base, replies Smith. Affirmative, confirms Ash. We can leave within the hour. Then do it, says Smith, and make damn sure Rainbow's last mission is one we can all remember proudly. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am, they all say in unison. Rainbow now has a final 24 hours to stop Phobos. Win or lose, it seems like they may be deactivated regardless. All operators have been told to stand down, and only the Alpha and Delta team are left standing. Thatcher and Denari will track down the explosives, as Ash and a recently recovered Dokubi will pursue and attempt to stop Phobos once and for all.
This is GSAC Dedicated Officer Aya Smith making her final report on the Rainbow program. Rainbow's last mission is underway. Global stability hangs in the balance. How did we get here? Deimos exploited our blind spots. He used Nighthaven as a distraction. Stayed ahead at every step. We should have known he was one of ours. The damage is done. Trust eroded. The Council is ending the program. And who can blame them? The public was endangered. GSAC itself targeted. People died. Outcomes Rainbow was created to prevent. But as long as Phobos is out there, there will be no peace. More than ever, failure is not an option. No matter what came before, Rainbow will come together and see this through. They'll make things right. They will find the explosives. They will stop Phobos, even if it costs them their lives. They've been fighting this enemy since day one. No other team on the planet can get this done. This is our last chance to salvage this. Otherwise, Phobos will be free to act globally. No one will be safe. See you on the other side.